Want to drive faster? Listen in as Kinch Rendell, an SCCA National Trophy winner and multi-time Pro Solo champion himself, interviews the best autocrossers in the land. He talks fast and drives even faster. And now here's your host, Kinch Rendell.
I've laughed harder going to and from autocrosses and the things that we've done, and I hung out with some really funny people and some really, really crazy people and stuff that it's just fantastic to me. My autocross life has been awesome, just awesome, and it's been fun for me to reminisce.
Hello, a couple of announcements to make. I am going to be doing a giveaway, most likely via the website, because I have some software that can do that with the WordPress website, but I'll link to it on Autocross Talks Facebook page. I have a handful of speed secrets. Man, that's tough. It's a secret. It's tough to say. Winning autocross techniques and some other books to do a giveaway. And this is something I got a while back and realized, hey, once we get to 1,000 fans on Facebook, thank you all for that, for paying attention, for sharing, for commenting on these. I do a giveaway, so probably will be some t-shirts as well. I'll have at least 10, maybe 20 different things to give away there. So thanks for the support there and commenting and sharing and just giving feedback as well. That's huge. Talking to people you want to hear on the show, let them know. In addition to that, anybody that saw my trip to Packwood, I picked up some ducks. Well, the bad is I only have one duck left. The good is I still have one duck, unfortunately. But fortunately, I guess, maybe it'll fly off as it gets bigger. So if you check my Facebook page and or my Snapchat, you can see a duck at times. Pretty cute little guy. In addition to that, I am strongly considering, at least I'll do 1 or 2 or 3 and see how this goes and what you think and your input. I'm doing some webinars where once a week, once a month, we'll figure out how this works. Basically get online and do where we can share screens. You guys can interface with myself and or somebody else. We might watch videos and just answer questions about autocross in general and just see what kind of questions come up, what you guys are thinking. That way you can have some input and get some answers. Whether we turn that into a show or not, I don't know. Maybe we'll record it, make it a YouTube video. Anything like that. We might do things like just watching videos like I make the coaching videos. We might do data analysis. The range there. And once again, if we pull in another guest again, they might answer certain questions for you. So it's something, let me know your thoughts on that. I will definitely announce it on Facebook well ahead of time. I have no clue if 5 people show up or 20 or what we can do there and how many people can fit on the different webinar type platforms from Zoom and such to Google Hangouts to a Facebook group if we can share the video and such. All right, this week's guest, and sorry for taking so long. I lost my notes. Our house is being remodeled and I could not find this notebook. I'm like, I know I have to cut some stuff out, but in 3 hours of a show, where? So I found my notes. So get this. I hope you all don't know who this is yet. Driver of Eminence Award winner, Solo National Driver of the Year. And here's where you can start cluing in a little bit more like, I wonder who that could be. Most years between championships, 29. 26 trophies overall. A Silver Circle member inductee. Championships in DSP in 1988 and 1987, FSP 2010, SMF 2016. Also a Solo 2 CSP championship in 1990. This is Jinx Jordan. It was fun. He warned me. He goes, well, how long you got? We can talk however long. He's like, you can have me back. I could do 12 hours just on the stories to and from. So not only are you going to get stories, because Jinx remembers them and has just had a great life living through his hobby of autocross with his wife as well. It's also input and thoughts. He's also an Evo instructor, so you get to hear his thoughts there as well. So enjoy this one and let us know what you think. And thanks again for sharing, and thanks again for the 1,000 Facebook likes. That is amazing. Enjoy. Jinx, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here, Kinch. Looking forward to this for a while. I know we've been back and forth a few times trying to get this done. It's kind of cool to finally have it happen.
Oh, I appreciate it big time. And the fact that you've listened to some shows, you really get it. What goes on, like you know the questions before I can even ask them. So lately I've been trying not to even ask all those same questions because it seems like people just kind of come forth. But tell us, where are you at right now?
Currently I live in Carroll, North Carolina. It's a beautiful sunny afternoon here. For summertime, usually it's getting pretty hot. I'm sitting out on the porch, looking through the Rocky Intrican book, and so I have answers if you have specific questions.
Luckily, I have that PDF version of his book with all the records there. A little plug for Rocky. If somebody wants the history from the solo nationals side of things, it's amazing how he has everything. You can just, for me, I just search it and find what I need to find to create show notes and such.
So I'm still in the old loose leaf version, but this is. I hope that it goes on forever.
Exactly, Blake. Let's just keep it. So you said before we started recording 40 years, that you might kind of chuckle at some of us that have only been doing it 10 or 15.
Yeah. I started in 1973. Was my first autocross with a little club. I grew up in Maine, and so a little club called Cumberland Sports Car Club up there. And actually, I started with cars long before that, but that was my first foray into autocrossing. And the guys in the local club laughed at me because I didn't have an on-course run for the first 3 events that I competed in. And I just couldn't get it. But it was a lot of fun, and so I just kept trying at it and tried to see if I could get better. In those days, there was no novice class or anything like that. You just went to the events and landed where you landed. And so I was not a natural.
You were dodging cones, probably not being able to see the cones, and hopefully dodging some people back then?
Well, I started out, it goes back a long ways. My dad worked at a Pontiac dealership, and I kind of inherited that gene of cars, and I raced HO cars and slot cars, and then I got into drag racing for a while. And then my older brother was part of a sports car club, and he was big into rallying. And then so I started doing rallies with the local sports car club in the wintertime because, you couldn't autocross because there was a lot of snow on the ground. And so in the summertime, I got to know the sports car guys, and I said, you should come to an autocross. And drag racing wasn't going so good, and so I went and tried it, and I took a hard hit and have never turned back. I've loved it forever. Just, how we always say the first hit is free. Well, it was kind of free, but man, I'm full-blown addicted, full-blown.
And still, so that's their thing is, I always ask people what brings them back. I mean, 40 years, you're still addicted. You're teaching, you're coaching. It's your hobby. I mean, are there other hobbies like this that compare at all?
No, it's funny. I always say to people, I know people play golf and that they play tennis and ski and stuff. Autocross is pretty much it. I mean, I road raced for a while, and I love being involved in a lot of motorsports or being around it. It's not strange for me to go to a stock car race and watch, or a drag race and watch, but autocrossing is just I can never see a time. When I was road racing, I could see a time when I'd retire, and I did, 3 or 4 years ago. I stopped road racing because it was just the work wasn't worth, what I was getting out of it. But I can never see stopping autocross. I may not be good at it, but I'll, I can never see stopping. It's just too much fun. It's way too much fun.
Yeah, and good point about the road racing, which I haven't competed at any level except for a couple track days here and there. Just I hear it's the time and the money it takes to do that, whereas in autocross, you take out especially a street-type car, get out there, go race a bit, hang out with people, and you're done in the day.
Well, I went through, I won a couple of national championships in the 80s, and a lot of the guys, the shop that I was running out of at the time, were road racing, and I got bit, and then it was funny. I was kind of it's almost like I was not happy autocrossing for a while in the late 80s, early 90s. Still did it, but I wanted to go road racing really bad, and I felt I was getting older. And so I just, and I probably would have quit autocrossing for a while at that time, but Jeanette decided this was still her sport. She said, I don't care if you go road racing, but we're going to keep the autocross car and keep racing autocross. And so I kind of split my time between the two, but I was happy road racing at that time. And, I was semi-successful. I won a couple regional championships, and then I got a fast car and went to the runoffs a couple times, didn't do well. And then I ran more regional stuff. And in the end, I won a Road Race of Champions. That's big for the IT community and the IT festival at Mid-Ohio. And then I just kind of like I said, just how much work it took. There used to be a bunch of us. There was 4 or 5 guys, and we had 2 or 3 cars, and we all hung out. And then that was when I lived in New England. And then when I moved to North Carolina, it was pretty much just me. And I'm not much of a mechanic, or I've kind of had some great people that have helped me over the years, and so it just got to be that I wasn't able to keep up with it as well as I'd like to, and so it was easy to step away from road racing. I think I was kind of lucky that everybody's hero Tom O'Gorman was teaching Evo schools with me, and he came to me and wanted to buy my car. So it just kind of worked out. He took it, did good stuff with it, and then moved on to where he is today. But it was kind of cool to get him hooked at first, or get him started. It was a lot of fun.
Did you actually autocross with him as well, or you just set up or had the car that you sold to him? They took off road racing.
Actually, we autocrossed. We didn't autocross as co-drivers or anything, but my first encounter with Tom, I think, was Junior asked me to train him as an Evo instructor. And, at his young age, the biggest thing we hit, when we taught classes together, was that the older guys would go, what am I going to learn from this, young kid? And I remember assuring quite a few that if they paid attention, they'd learn a lot. And at the end of the day, always got the guy come back, go, you were right. I learned a lot from that guy. And so, that was it. So obviously, when you're on the road like that, you go to dinner together, you bunk together, something like that. And he had a lot of road racing questions, but I knew that he wasn't going to be happy running a regional type car for long. As a matter of fact, probably my quote to him was, "Race that car for a year, win everything in sight, and go get something that says Mazda on the side." And because I couldn't fathom that something that said that Honda was going to be an option for him, but he turned it into an option, and that was great. So that was, it's always great to talk to Tom and see him, watch him on TV. Matter of fact, I watched a race just the other day, while I was sitting in a parking lot waiting for an Evo school to finish, and pulled up an online run. But anyway, that's his career. He's another interview for me, or you've already had that. But that's where the road racing kind of ended. I thought that I'd do some chunk car, lemon stuff, rentals. I've done a couple, but it's just time. Right now, my biggest fight is finding time to do all the things I want to do.
Oh, exactly. And one thing about we don't have to get into full blown Evo school, or we can, is learning from people, whether they're younger, older, smarter, faster, slower. I don't think that necessarily matters as long as they communicate in a way you can notice, I guess, what somebody's doing. To me, is a big key.
And see, that was what, if you get a guy who's like, he comes out, he's going to freshen up on his Evo, on his skills, and he takes an Evo school, and he's say he's 30 years old, and he looks and sees this 20-year-old kid's going to teach him. And he's like, you've never heard of him at that time. Tom, I don't think had won any big awards probably when he first started teaching with Evo. And so he was kind of well known in his area, but not well known across the country. And some of us that, get to travel around and seen that. But yeah, we have some young instructors now, and it's good because they have the energy. I think of 15 years ago when I started with the Evo school teaching, that that I every weekend was punch out of work, run to the airport, fly somewhere, teach for 2 days, fly home, be back at my desk on Monday morning. And I look at it and I go, man, where did I have the energy to do that? No. Now when I do a school, I'm kind of retired, and so I need a day after just to recuperate from teaching 2 days, maybe even 3, and that's kind of what I do is I teach with Evo schools. I work for a teen advanced driving school that keeps me busy, and then I get like strange stuff that comes along as we go through life. You'll get a call, hey, I need you to do this week or that week or this month or whatever. And so often, I wish I'd had these opportunities 20 years ago. I could have managed my life a lot better. But and now it seems like everybody wants you to work on the weekend, and I want to go autocrossing every weekend. And but I still have to pay the bills. So it's a juggling act for sure. It's something that, when I'm in the cars or when I'm actually doing it, it's a lot of fun. But I think about what my time is like, and it's a pretty crazy life.
And what are the opportunities out there in the Carolina area for racing every weekend?
In this area, we have in my area, there's two real strong autocross groups. Central Carolina Region's autocross series, which hasn't always been great. It's kind of had its ups and downs, but the last 5 or 6 years, they've secured a very good site, the ZMAX Dragway in Concord, and it's a big lot, usually 60, 70-second courses. It's well attended, usually 150 to 200 people at each event, and so that's 45 minutes from home, and so it's a great spot, great group to work with. Also, there's the Triad Sports Car Club, which is actually celebrating their 50th anniversary this year. So they've been around for a long time. They run in varied lots. They have a couple small lots and a couple big lots, and so most of both groups bleed over to the other one. The CCR people run with Triad and vice versa. So that's, you can usually run close by a couple weekends a month. If you want to travel just a little bit further, you can run every week without going more than maybe 100 miles, which is not bad.
So there's another option besides California to run every weekend.
Oh yeah. Other than, we can run, like I said, we can run the South Carolina region. Has some that are pretty close to us. They're kind of move around from lot to lot too. But there's when they run at the Michelin test facility. It's referred to as the Black Lake around here. It's a pretty big site. It's a good site. Atlanta region, a little further away, but there was a time when local autocrossing wasn't very good. That Jeanette and I would travel to Atlanta, starting out with the New England region, which is a phenomenal autocross series, a phenomenal managed, group, from competitiveness. You look back, it used to be like San Francisco region, maybe a region in the Midwest, Cal Club, and New England region were the hotbeds of autocrossing in the 70s and 80s. And so we Jeanette and I started, those are the people we ran with. We moved to North Carolina, man, it was like stepping back 10 years. It was like the timers didn't work, the management didn't work. I mean, it just was tough, and it was just, because the people that were running it at the time, like this is in the early 2000s, they just stayed home and they just knew what they knew what the guy before him taught them. They didn't get out and do national events. And so it wasn't fun for us. And we knew Atlanta was 200 miles away and that they had a good program. So for a long time, Jeanette and I would just drive to Atlanta and run with the Atlanta Club. It meant it ate up most of the weekend. We'd leave on Saturday afternoon, hotel at Saturday night, and run whatever class we could on Saturday morning, so we could come back Sunday afternoon.
Oh,
but
nice.
Anyway, it was what we needed. Having been national competitors for so many years, pro solo competitors, tour competitors. It wasn't to run on a little 30-second lot that went over itself twice. Wasn't good autocrossing, and there was, it wasn't run well at the time. Luckily, it's turned the corner, and those people have grown tremendously to the point that I'd say right now we're on the leading edge instead of falling behind. That the Central Carolina region and our North Carolina as a whole is really strong. We produce really strong autocrossers, and so I'm glad to maybe influenced it a little, but just to be around and see it is really cool.
Yeah, nice. So take us back when you first began. What do you remember, like the sizes being? Evidently, there probably wasn't much tire choice. Were you around for the tennis balls on cones? Was that something around you, or just at nationals?
No. that tennis ball thing was something that was somebody's idea, and it kind of came and went. But no, the thing I remember the most, I can remember being with a bunch of guys who went out and stole pylons, because we didn't. That was how you got pylons for your local club. You'd go to a construction site, steal every other one or every third one or something, and they were big and heavy and rubber, and they busted up your car pretty bad if you hit them. So it was not just a 2-second penalty. You were probably looking at, bumpers weren't what they are today and stuff, and that was probably the thing that stood out the most to me. I actually saw a Gymkhana once before I started racing, where the guy actually, in their old English sports cars, would drive up to a garage and back in reverse direction. And so that was probably the first autocross I ever saw. And I go, man, that is wild, non-synchronized transmissions and stuff. And they'd like fly into a stop box, what we call a stop box today, and back into a garage and then go the other way. And it's like, man, and that was like a real Gymkhana, before autocrossing was autocrossing. So that was kind of interesting. It was fun to watch. And so yes, we just drove in on our tires. That's something that the street tire people, today are embracing. And it's funny how we've gone back to pretty much our roots, our beginning is like, because that's how you autocrossed. I can remember when my kids were little, we had an old Honda Civic. We ran Hondas before they were cool. In the early 80s, I had a 1200 Civic, and I put 2 kids in it. Jeanette and I, we'd have a roof rack with a playpen, toolbox, and a cooler, and we went autocrossing. It was like nutty, but we ran on our race tires. Our race tires were our daily driver tires. There was a lot of interesting brands to start off with, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, and the people that are running street tires today are experiencing the same thing that we experienced, 40 years ago, because that was autocrossing. There was a tire to have like there is now, but it was something that you bought a set, ran them all year.
Yeah, and that's where people made a big deal. I'm like, it's phenomenal how cheap they are, especially like a Civic. Not that I drive it to events anymore, but I know some people that do drive on their street cars. They drive to the events and drive back on them. Not that big of a deal.
It's very cool to see that. Like I said, we've stepped back and we've gone back to our roots. It's kind of where we're at with it. But yeah, we had. God, I'm trying to think of strange tire brands. We had some. So when I first started, my first car that I autocrossed, I think it was a 240Z. And that was a great transition car from drag races, because you could still go out and drag race Corvettes on the street, on the weekends, and still go to the autocross on Sunday and have a pretty good car. But I think it was a Continental at the time. Tire was the tire to have. And then after that, I think there was a Phoenix Stallflex, which looked like a real low-profile tire, and they were pretty cool. Pirelli had a tire. Clay Bear. Still have a set of 12-inch Clay Bears that go in a 1200 Civic out back of the house, because it was just, there was nowhere to go with them. But and then we got into there was a good year in the early 80s. Then Yokohama came along, and that kind of turned the sport upside down. When the first Yokohama 001, that was the tire that turned out when manufacturers realized they could put a soft compound on, and we'd gobble them up.
Like, this is the best ever. How long were those lasting?
A set of Yokohamas. Well, that was when Yokohamas came along. I'd say that was the turning point when we realized we had to have a street tire and an autocross tire. You couldn't. They didn't cross over. And by then I was running front drive cars, for sure. I started with the front drive cars in like '81, and so they were. I don't know what they lasted. If we get a season out of them, I think autocrossing, but not daily, not driving them to and from. But towards when they came out, I'd say it was about the time we started trailering. I personally started trailering cars to the events. We got into street prepared and station wagons to tow, because we just couldn't the kids were getting bigger. You couldn't stuff them in the back of Hondas anymore. We got into the first, we had a CRX in '84, and I think that's when we started towing. And that was just about the time the Yokohamas came out. So just you know, they were a tire that would last Jeanette and I a season. She won her first national championship on Yokohamas in '85. So that was the last year we ran Yokohamas. The following year we switched over to Hoosiers, and we've been with them ever since.
Yeah, I think you mentioned 30 years.
Yeah, 30 years on Hoosiers.
Yeah.
Thick and thin, we used to test for them in the early days. We tested a lot for them, and during some of the BF Goodrich Hoosier tire wars, we were on the Hoosier side for sure, and it's been a great ride with those people are really support our sport. I'm really proud to be part of that history with them, and to know that I helped a little bit along the way with development of some of the early tires. And I'm kind of proud of that.
Yeah, and that's where I think there's opportunities people don't realize, or everybody hasn't tried to get, from working in the industry at some point, helping out, maybe getting some perks with tire people, to even coaching and teaching. So many ways. Like, I always think, how can you take a hobby and turn it into maybe not a cost, maybe you can write off some things and things like that. I imagine you've seen some of that over the years as well as you've experienced it yourself, it looks like.
Yeah. Well, it's a business, but you know, there are times I worked for the Northeast Hoosier distributor for a couple of years, and while you think it would be, wow, this is going to be so cool, I'm going to work for the tire company, it was like you never got a day off. It'd be Sunday, you go to the autocross, and it's like, all right, I'm going to go out. You know, I've got a session, a group, you know, with heat, so I have a session off. I go in my motorhome, lay down on the couch, and somebody come and knock on the door. I'm trying to take a nap, and because I worked pretty much 7 days a week during the summer, and they knock on the door. Not, you know, just totally, you know, who cares? You know, why do I run for tire producers? Or, you know, what do you think I should do with this? And it's like, gosh, do it, you know? And it was interesting, but it's easy to see how guys that are tire engineers and the tire guys usually aren't racing because they just can't fit it into their schedule. And I learned real early that it was real hard to balance everything. Matter of fact, during that program, I was like road race, drag race manager at the Northeast distributor. And I had a conflict with Nationals. And we had an agreement that I was going to go to Nationals every year. And I had a drag race conflict. And that was the only Nationals I've missed, I think, since '81. It was in 1996 I missed. And it drove me nuts to be standing around at a drag race instead of competing. And the job didn't last much longer. I wasn't a couple more months, and I went and found something that wouldn't conflict with my national championship. So, that was that.
Funny. So I will throw in the last job I had working for somebody else. I planned to give them like 2 or 3 months. Okay, I'm gonna be gone, and it was all set up around Nationals. I'm like, no, I'm working up until then. I'm gone. I'm going to Nationals. Like, it was the final party, final hurrah. So that's funny that, if it makes you miss something you really like thinking, oh, I could be at Nationals again, especially I guess you'd been there probably like 15 years in a row or something, and you had to miss it for work. Oh.
Yeah, but Jeanette still went. We've had this, you know, like you're going to, you know, as we talk, you're going to see that, you know, like I said, I've been with Hoosier for 30 years. We've had like 2 or 3 different cars over the last like 30 years. It's like I'm stick with a lot of things. And so that particular year, Fred White, who started autocross and club driving with us when we were in New England, probably mid-'90s, and he said, well, Jeanette and I are going, whether you're going or not. And so she went to Nationals, actually won national championship that year, and I wasn't there to see it. You know, and there was no cell phones like there are today. She could call me in between runs and, you know, tell me where she was and stuff. And it was like I was in the middle of, you know, out in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania at this drag race. And I kept calling back to the shop, you know, because I had no way to get to me. And they'd tell me, you know, she did good after her second run or something like that. It was really weird to not know how she was doing until it was over. And so she and I made an agreement after that we weren't going to do that anymore. That we were going together, experiencing this stuff together. That's too big. Even though she's won as many as she has, it's too big of an experience in our life to miss. To miss not be there. For each other, for national championships, to be there to race together and to be there when the other one wins. That's pretty big for us.
Yeah, that was, like you say, had to be torture. And back then, no Facebook Live, no cell phone. Let me call the shop where she can call or somebody can call and report.
Yeah, you didn't know what you were missing because you had never experienced those things. Today it would be torture, or today it wouldn't be bad. Today somebody could, video it live to me back. Watch your runs, and I could probably even critique it. Yeah. But we didn't know what we were missing. So it wasn't bad, but it was gut-wrenching for me to be sitting there. I'm dealing with customers and and stuff, and my heart wasn't there. My heart was in Kansas, 1,000 miles away, wanting to be competing and hanging out with my friends and doing all the things that we enjoy every year.
How many people have found a different job because of autocross and be like, you're cutting into my autocross schedule, I've got to find another job.
Cutting into my autocross schedule. Cutting into my, gosh, I can remember stuff. Oh, I had the job prior to that. I had vacation time and sick time, and God, I never left a one on the table. I used it all. And I had this boss who was really cool. I said to him, do you want to know a day I'm going to call out sick beforehand, or you want to just find out that day? He said, well, tell me ahead of time. It's like, so that way I can kind of plan the day and just call in normally. And I can remember being in airports, calling in sick, the announcement from my gate going on overhead. I'm on a pay phone calling in sick. I can remember stopping in Western Pennsylvania on my way to Pro Solo, 7 o'clock in the morning. No, I'm supposed to be there. I better call in saying, oh, I'm sick, and then hang up, jump back in the motorhome, keep on going, to wherever it was we were going. And so, the boss always knew that I was going to be out. They were usually Fridays and Mondays. Most of the time I got sick Fridays and Mondays to make it 2 events. But I wouldn't change a thing. Wouldn't change it at all. It was pretty awesome.
When did Pro Solo enter into your addiction?
Seems like I ran like 1 or 2 a year during the mid-'80s. And then I started running. There was from the Northeast, from New England, there was no Pro Solo within 300 miles. So you pretty much have to travel. You may experience that where you live now, but there was nothing close, and so, if you lived in the middle of the country, it was a lot easier to access. There was Harrisburg, Pennsylvania for the longest time, or Pittsburgh, or around Pittsburgh there was one, but there was a lot of traveling involved to do Pro Solos. Jeanette would pick me up at work on Thursday night, and drive to Nashville, Tennessee, 1,200 miles. I can remember going to Shreveport, Louisiana to Pro Solos. But it was probably late 80s, early 90s that I ran Pro Solos for a few years. I've kind of come and gone as far as Pro Solo is concerned. The kids were playing soccer and baseball and stuff, and it just didn't work to go. It just didn't work. So I just quit like mid-90s. I was road racing, so that was that. I went back in the late, like 2008 through 10 or so. I went back and ran again. I was promoting that was part of my gig when Tim Arrow and I started the other school. I was kind of, one of my responsibilities to the school was to go out and promote. So I went to Pro Solos both to compete and to promote the school, and so I ran that for a while, and then I didn't. And then this year I've gone to a couple Pro Solos, but nobody knows because I haven't done well. I haven't done too good. I just kind of been playing with a streetcar car. It was an experiment. It was a good experiment. And it's probably on the shelf for now for a little while.
That's one of the only notes I had was, hey, ask him about the H Street car. Like, I was like, oh, if that's the one I think it is, those things are really stiff. When I saw one, I couldn't believe in stock form how stiff they were.
Well, and I read that comment somewhere where you said it out loud to somebody. And the car really isn't that stiff. But the one you were watching is really that stiff, because you were watching the Laura. It was Laura Harbor's car at Nationals. I think was the one you commented on.
Yeah.
And she had. It was funny. She ran the Pro Solo at the finale in her car, and I had just bought mine like a month or so, 2 or 3 weeks beforehand, and I bought it with the intention of running a little bit of 8th Street and kind of paying attention. Well, anyway, she had bought the car only a couple weeks before Nationals also, and just put Coney's and Bridgestones on, to the best of my knowledge, and ran it. And during the Pro Solo, she just had off the shelf Coney's on it. And then she pulled them out and handed them to Lee Grimes from Coney, who's probably an awesome unsung hero of our sport. That Coney comes out every year, and I got a feeling that it's Lee's deal that they come. There is a reason that they're there. And anyway, so she pulled them out and had Lee revalve them, and then she tested on the test course on Tuesday or one of the days. She came out for an Evo test day, and he kind of tuned the car in. Well, to make those cars work, he had to put a stiff shock in it. And so that was what, you almost want to immobilize the rear end, and as David referred to, when he has gotten better at figuring it out, but with stock springs, you've just got to lock that back end down. It's a lot different than a modified car where you can play around with it a little bit. And it was kind of lucky, because I brought a set of Coney's out to Nationals with the intent of putting it in the car, and I was just going to have Lee rebuild them, take advantage of his service and our longtime friendship, I guess. But when Laura was working on hers, I said, well, wait and do mine until after Laura, you work out what Laura's doing. And so they were the last set Lee delivered before he left on Wednesday from the Coney truck, was my set for my 8th Street car. So we have similar setups, but to be honest with you, you take those shocks, that's what's amazing about current technology. You take that set of reval shocks, and they're really, really stiff when you crank them up. You roll them back to the softest setting. You drive down the street, it's not harsh at all. It's really, really cool technology. All the shocks that are out there now are cool technology. But the fact that you can just crank them back and drive home, and I think that's the appeal to the street class category. It's so little effort to compete, have fun, and enjoy our sport, and still be able to not have to have an extra car and a trailer and all the things that go with it.
Believe me, I realize that. I discuss it and think about it for years upon years. I'm like, would I want to go back to that? So with those shocks, they probably have tons of compression, I'm guessing?
I guess. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not real technical with with stuff. A lot of people that know me a little closer, is I drive what I get into. It kind of comes from years of playing with other people's cars and stuff that just you get in. Pretty much the only question I'll ask a student when I get in the car is this a turbo or a non-turbo? Because the turbo usually will kick in on you at some point when you're driving their car. But as far as setup, I could tell you a lot of stories about places that I've really fought setup, and then somebody will walk by and say, "Hey, have you ever tried this?" And no, I haven't, but I hear it in my head, and I'll go home and I'll try it. It's like, wow, that really made a big difference in my car. And so I'm kind of listen to what other people say and take advice from people, but never been much for setting up cars really on my own. It's usually with help.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I'm at. I'm like, I just have to get somebody to come out and actually make me do it, because I keep thinking I'm going to do it and I haven't been. So when it comes to the setup portion, obviously I'm sitting there hoping it doesn't matter as much. What have you learned from all the teaching and driving about the setup? Have you found when you get other people to help you, is it huge? Is it huge for people to do it? Or when you're teaching these people, I keep thinking they probably need to figure themselves out more so than tweaking on the car.
Well, kind of our approach at schools is don't touch your car. It's like at a school, if you're going to come and somebody will call you on the phone and say, "Hey, I'm thinking about taking an Evo school. What should I do? Should I buy a new set of tires and all that?" And I say, absolutely not. put your Sears road handlers on your car, because you're going to make a lot of runs in a row. Why wear out your good times? You know, and it's like, and the other thing is, what you want to do is know at the end of the day that whatever improvement you got, you did, not because you changed tire pressures or put another spin in the shocks or something. You want to know that it's you. So you want that car to almost be an appliance. It's just something that you need to get the education. You know, you'll get Formula car guys. What do? Go rent a Mustang. Go rent a car. You know, and you'll get the education. Whatever we teach you at whatever school you go to, whatever we teach will translate over to your car. The only thing we're trying to do at those type of schools is to make the driver better. It's not about setup. The worst thing you can do is roll in with a brand new set of sticker tires. And a lot of people have gotten their heart broke before because at the end of the day, they're all wore out, and it was money not well spent. It kind of ends up being, you know, kind of a disappointment to them. They've shown up with this long-lasting tire that have a lot more fun. They don't have to worry about it. And they know at the end of the day that they got better, not that the setup was better. So that's kind of my, you know, that's kind of my thought on schools, and hence schools don't teach me a thing about setup. You know, that's not my plan, is to learn setup from people, or advise them even on setup, because I'm not really that good at it.
And I love that thought for schools, or anytime you're out there practicing, you can walk away knowing, hey, I didn't touch my car. Maybe I checked my air pressures, kept them the same, but I learned how to go faster. It wasn't tweaking on the car. Whereas if you're changing the car, then you don't know. Was it the car? Was it my setup? I love that idea, honestly.
Exactly. It's like, and it's not, you know, that's kind of been the Evo approach, you know, from the beginning, you know, even before Mike and Gene even, that those things were what you were shooting for. You were shooting for the student at the end of the day, knowing that they got better. Launch the car, put it in second gear, whether the guy who sold you the car told you it didn't make any power till it got to $6,000, S2000s come to mind. They all want to rev them out, wind them out. Just shift the car, you know, and enjoy and drive the car. And then at the end, you know that if you do all those things consistently, you know, then at the end you'll know that you got better, not the car. And like I said, so that turns over into, really, I don't learn a lot about setup. I have a story for you. We came back from Nationals in 2010, and Jeanette and I kind of have a State of the Union deal, you know, on the way home. We discussed, you know, the year and what we're going to do over the winter to get better and all that stuff. And so both of us had won in 2010. So we're driving home. It's like, she's like, thankfully this year we're not going to have to do anything to the car to get better. And I kind of started laughing. She goes, what are you laughing about? I go, do you think all the others are sitting home saying, well, we'll just let Jinx and Jeanette win for, you know, the next 5 years? She said, well, no. And I said, well, that means we got to keep working on it. So I proposed buying some, we were on Coney's at the time, and I proposed buying some, I proposed Motons. And she went nuts. She goes, we're not spending that kind of money on shocks and all that. She's like we're going to keep up, we are. And 2 months later, we had Motons. And so during the first half of the year, I could not make those shocks work. It got bad enough that I pulled them out, put my Coney's back in, and ran the second half of the season with the Coney's. And she, you know, brought it up at the next year's, you know, discussion of, she says, what are we going to do with those shocks? I said, we're going to put them back in, we're going to figure them out. But I said, we ran out of time, because I don't touch my car. After June, July, early June, late June or so, I'm done. Right about now, I'm done with playing with my car. We made improvements. We just got to figure out how to, you know, make it work, and so it's consistent when it really matters. So I put the Motons back in the car, and I couldn't figure them out. So finally, there was a local guy, pretty well known, that I went to, and I said, drive my car. And he went out, took a run in my car, and he came back, and he lifted the hood, and he made like 2 adjustments in shocks. He went back out, he came back, made 1 more adjustment, came back. He says, okay, it's perfect. And I got in the car, and it was like magic. The car was like amazing. And so that was in, I don't know, 2012, 2013, something like that. And I bet I haven't changed those shock settings a click maybe a couple times. Bumpy lot, I might take some compression out. Rain, I'll soften it up. But other than that setup is still in the car today. I laugh when I see some of my competitors. They've one in particular I've seen bought 3 different sets of shocks in the last 6 months, and I was like, wow, I would be so lost if I had to do that. And so that same guy comes out once a year, and I have him get in the car once a year, at a test day or run an event with me, and he'll tell me that, it's still the setup, and we don't touch it. I really don't. I play a little bit with the air pressure some days, but for the most part, my car is the same as it was 3 years ago as far as alignments and setups and the air pressures and everything. Nothing's changed. There's no reason to change it.
Yeah, exactly. If you're comfy with it, still feel competitive and you like the way it feels, leave it be.
That's kind of it. I talked about buying. I talked with one of our good sponsors, the folks from Brian Carwin from Carceps, who, by the way, is such an awesome guy to work with. He kind of looked at me weird when I told him I was going to build one of these cars, this street modified car, and he already had one. He said, "All right, I'll help you as much as I can." And let me tell you something. I called that guy at 11 o'clock at night on a Saturday, and said, "Dude, I got a problem," and he'll walk me through it. He's such an awesome guy to be around, and he's kind of grown. It's kind of fun to watch him. He's grown a lot over the years. Over the years we've been together, and he's real big, and everybody knows him for sway bars today. But he's so meticulous in his work, and he's such an awesome guy to be associated with, and makes awesome products. And so there's my Brian Carwin plug for sure. You can catch him at Carceps, and anybody knows his stuff and knows how good he is. And one phone call to Brian, and you'll know why I'm so big on him, because he's just a great guy.
Yeah, that's the thing.
He's one of the few that's learned how to make a living in our sport. But I think it started out selling to drag racing stuff, but he's grown to be a great supporter of our sport.
Yeah, that's where there's so many people. It seems like they will spend the time to help you and talk through things. Really, just
I called him and asked him. I called him and asked him about shocks. Just like, are you happy with what you got? I said, yeah, they're pretty good, but couldn't there be something better? If that car's working the way you want it to, don't touch the thing. Yeah. And it was really good advice. He could have said, yeah, I'll sell you, another set of shocks and taken the sale. But I don't think, the good guys won't do that. They won't take your money unless they can help you get better. But if it's just to stay static, he said, no. He says, I wouldn't even start down that path. Just be happy, be glad your car works the way it does. So some days it'll wear out, or someday you'll need to make a change. But if it's working, don't touch it. And we were, at the time, fairly successful. So he was right. There was no reason to upgrade.
Exactly. So many people are like, oh, let me try these shocks. Let me try those shocks. And I guess if you're not fast, or as fast as you want to be, and everything else is the same, somebody else has those shocks. But then again, like you said, get somebody else in the car is my whole thought. Especially if they're known for setup, and let them tweak on the car, and then get back in and try that right there that you said a while ago. That's
and it's funny. The guy, he's gone on to be pretty good, but nobody knew him at the time. And the guy that I put in the car to do it, it wasn't really building up or being a secret about it, but it was Dave O'Malley, and he was his. I watched, Dave came out. He ran a bunch of different cars, and when he landed in the ST car, I don't know if it was C or S, or it would be an SDS car now, I guess, the Civic. And nobody knew much about him, but watching him drive, and he's grown a lot, teaching a lot, has helped him grow, and that's a common thread that a lot of these guys that are really good. We all say seat time, and it's just, I swear that I see a lot of people my age, and that used to be really great, that are not as sharp and not as good as they used to be, and it has to do with being in the seat. But Dave was one that realized early that he had to get into the car and be in cars a lot, and did it. And so, but he understood shocks. All I can think of is my fanny's just not technical enough to analyze what I needed to analyze. I know when it feels right, but when it's wrong, I just drive around it.
That's what I think. I just get to the limit of what the car can do without really thinking, hey, mid-corner, it's missing this or that. My brain doesn't yet equate that. It just, what's it doing? Okay, get there.
Yeah, it's like you see so many people are like, just trying to, because this guy's got it, they got to have it, and in some cases that's accurate. When in a street class where you only have a few changes to make, more than likely there is the best street tire, or the best sway bar, but in our stuff where there's so many adjustable parts and everybody's correct way of autocrossing is not the same, is you kind of got to burn your own path. You've got to figure it out yourself. It's not the same. What I do may not be the same for you, Kinch. It just is, there is no one way to autocross.
Exactly. I did like that in the Civics. It seems like you can kind of get something in the general range and just go race and be competitive. That to me has always been nice. Same thing with Integra back in the day. David Fouth, what shocks? Yeah. What'd you do? Although I did different double adjustable shocks, but he's like, you do this, this, and this. I'm like, okay, thanks.
Yep, and probably the next week the guy had him and was lost because he didn't know what they could do or how to get where he needed to get. That was what I thought with the double adjustables. I just couldn't get the car to feel right to me. And in the course of 3 runs, Dave brought it right in. That the first year in 2011, I put those in, and they had won Pro Solo, class championships a couple years before that, and a couple of new guys came in. And I was just way behind the curve. I just, for some reason, just didn't have it, couldn't figure it out with this new shop. And so we were at Pro Solo. I was out, after class competition at Spring Nationals. Junior had a course set up, and I wasn't working for Junior at the time. I was promoting my own school, and I looked at Freddie White, who was with me at the event. I said, we can go back to the hotel and sit in the air conditioning. It was brutally hot. I think it was 2011. It was smoking hot that day. And I said, we can go back to the hotel and we can sit in the air conditioning and cry in our beer about how we sucked this weekend, or we can go and test and see if we can figure something out. He said, well, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, what do you want to do? So I go to Junior. I said, you got a test course set up over there. What are you doing with it? He said, I've got people coming at 4, and it's probably like 1 o'clock at the time. He said, do you want to use it? I said, yep. He said, so he came over and turned on the timer for me. And Freddie got in the car, and he's a little more analytical than I am. And so he made 30 runs. We went through the gambit of air pressure and shocks, and he got it. So he felt that it was the best it could be. And I got in it, and I agreed. It felt really good. We went back to the course of the tour the next day. I'm still 2 seconds behind those guys, the other guys in class. And it's like, I was just heartbroken, that I just could not figure. That's when I changed the shocks. I came home and put the conies back in. Couldn't do it. But Dave figured it out, nailed it in 3 runs. It was almost unbelievable to see it, how quick somebody who knows what they're doing can just zero right in.
Yeah, and that's amazing, especially when you realize some of these people, especially younger, they played lots of video games and they made their adjustments for handling in the video game side, and yet that still can relate to them being in the car. They add the extra sensations of actually sitting in the car and, hey, let's try this, let's try that. I'm amazed by that.
I've tried video games, and it's not a talent. I keep thinking, well, I should get a simulator or put a small simulator program together, and so I can go out and race a little bit more, and maybe fill the void of road racing. And every time I get in, I enjoy it. I miss the G-load. I miss the feeling of the car. It feels really, it's just numb to me. And how people translate one to the other, I have no idea. I've tried it. It's fun, but I can't cross it over to what we do.
Yeah, believe me, I keep thinking I'm going to commit more time to this. And if I end up playing something, it's with my kids playing something they want to play. Just like, I'll hang out with my kids and play. I'm like, oh, yeah, the steering wheel's right there. I should connect that back up. So with all this coaching and teaching, you even said the seat time is key. What will entice the listeners to think, yes, I should get out there and try coaching and helping, even if they don't think they're super fast? I bet you can say that, hey, you don't have to be the best at this to help other people to notice what they're doing or could do better. and bonuses are seat time and other things that would get out of that.
And seat time is kind of a broad stroke. I mean, I say seat time, and it isn't all just, driving in an autocross situation. If you have that opportunity, that's great, but it isn't something that opportunity is hard to come by. To be an Evo instructor, at least in my mind, is kind of an honor. It's kind of a recognition of what you can do, but it doesn't all translated with success. I don't think. I've seen some really great autocrossers, really great teachers that aren't great autocrossers, as opposed to a lot of guys are really great autocrossers and can't teach. They can't tell you what they do. They can't translate it into. So seat time is not always just instructing. I mean, if you have the opportunity to instruct with your local club, then by all means, that's where you start. That's pretty much how I started. As I went out and did novice schools with my local region, and I loved it. And probably if I could go back to 25 years old and know how much I love teaching, I'd probably go back to school and become a teacher, even if it was a math teacher or something, because it's just a lot of fun. It's really cool to translate college and see, your student improve and see your student be successful. It's really cool to do that. I mean, a lot of people don't understand us at trophy presentation and say, yep, that kid was with me. I've had that kid in my class, and I'm proud of what they've accomplished, that I know that I helped them along the way. And so it's really gratifying to do that. I say to people that it's almost as much fun watching them watching trophies as watching others that you helped along the way and helped them enjoy what I consider my sport. Help them enjoy it more, know that it's gonna grow and flourish, and maybe I have a little bit to do with it.
Exactly. That's it. I think in so many professions or any kind of coaching and teaching, that's what gives you the real feedback, or helping in any matter. It's how good you feel about it.
But it isn't all just autocross schools. I work for a teen advanced driving school, which is to the people who are autocrossing and with SCCA, similar to what Street Survival is. The company that I work for is a nonprofit. We have our own fleet of cars. Actually, we have 3 fleets of cars across the country and do 60 or 70 schools a year. Obviously, I'm not at each school because I have other things to do with my life. It's always weekends because that's when kids aren't in school. So, it's not strange for me to do 16 or 18 of them. And so it's all right seat instructing new drivers how to get out of bad situations, how to get out of a skid, how to do threshold braking, ABS exercises, slalom exercises, understanding how it works with the car. But I swear that just doing that, just riding along with kids and passing it on, you're still active and you're still in a car. And even though it's a production-based car with no modifications, it still is seat time. It still is. I'm around cars. I'm talking about cars. So it keeps me engaged in motorsports, even though it has nothing to do with performance. And it's not strange to get exposed to different things all the time. Last week I was in Jeeps doing off-road exercises with people, and it's just it was not really anything to do with autocrossing, but still you kind of were in tune with what the vehicle was doing and how to make it do what you wanted to do, and so you were just engaged with the vehicle. And so all that stuff converts into seat time, in my opinion.
Yeah, just like the video games. I mean, for some of us, it's like, no, there's no way that could help. Yes, it can help.
It probably does help the folks that grew up. It's amazing to watch the new guys come in and they already understand, loose and understeer, oversteer, that kind of stuff. And it's just because they've got it from the video games. They don't know what it actually feels like because they have no feedback other than a little bit of jiggling in their steering wheel, but it still is beneficial to them, and that's why I say that, you know, even though I'm sitting right seat with a kid who has trouble finding drive in the car because they're so new at driving a car, they still learn stuff. You're still engaged in what the vehicle's doing and analyzing what the vehicle's doing and conveying it to the person that's driving. It's like, you know, you're in trouble. No, you're really in trouble, you know, kind of thing. And it's like, you know, it's just being engaged and being around cars. And to me, you know, probably upwards of 60 or 70 days a year that I'm sitting in a car doing something, you know, with either students or driving myself or teaching, that I get, you know, that I keep engaged with the car. And I think that's what's worked for me is in the longevity in the sport. I should have faded a long time ago. Should have been, you know, I should easily, if you look at some people that were really great that stayed with it and their skills have deteriorated, I should have been gone a long time ago. But I think it's just because I stay engaged with the vehicles, and I really just love it, and it just works out.
Yeah, it's still a passion, big time. Still a hobby passion that you really like investing back into and being around. I think that's what keeps people on the edge or whatever, being competitive and such, and still doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's you know, I mean, it's so much fun, and the people, you know, you can have a really crappy day at an autocross, and somebody will come by and, you know, pat you on the back and say, "This wasn't your day," but it wasn't, you know, and then you'll go and sit around and tell stories about the old days with folks, and you'll sit around and, you know, and it's just, you know, when you take the helmet off, it's all kind of behind you, and by all means, that, you know, as the years have gone on, I've embraced the social aspect of quite a bit more than I used to. You know, I was so focused that, you know, I had to get a good night's sleep. I had to do all these, you know, play it by the book. If I wasn't, you know, eating dinner, I'd go back out and walk the course more and stuff. And I've learned to balance that a little bit better, and it's probably made me a little better because I'm kind of more well-rounded at events than I was a long time ago. Nobody remembers, but a long time ago I was a little too intense.
Well, yeah, no, but take us through the evolution of how much, let's say, what your walking courses and such when you began, how that changed when you got really competitive, to what you're doing now. Like, take us through the evolution maybe why you changed.
And you know, the sport, you know, I'm really fortunate to have seen it kind of evolve, and walking courses, you know, is something that, you know, I think I learned from others that you can just beat yourself up walking courses, you know, and I was one of them 10, 12, you know, walk kind of guys, you know, 20 years ago especially when, you know, I won a couple national championships in the 80s, and then I get into the 90s, and, you know, and I wasn't doing good, and I thought that it was maybe I wasn't doing good. But I'd walk courses, but I didn't really analyze them. You know, I just kind of figured out direction. It wasn't strange then, it still isn't strange for me to go out and do the social walks, you know, hey, walk with me, and, you know, you'll focus, you'll be good with people for 3 corners, and all of a sudden you're talking about, you know, how well you did last week, or you know, story about towing in, or whatever you land on, you know, Jinx, hey, tell the story about, you know, the Ohio Zoo in 1942, that kind of thing, you know, and so, and you just, before you know it, you're done walking, but you haven't really walked the course. And so I think that when I started with Evo and subsequently some of the instructors kind of, you know, I kind of learned from others that if I could go out and do 2 walks and memorize the course, then I didn't have to be out there beating myself up. Some of this may be age too. It's not as easy to walk, you know, not as easy to walk the course as much as it was before. But if I can make 3 runs, you know, and memorize the course, and I'm, you know, I do the close my eyes Stevie Wonder thing at the finish, you know, where my head's bobbing, my hands are moving, and kind of walk the course. But when I know that I've got it memorized, then more than likely you're not going to see me out on a walking course anymore. I'll go back and sit in a race car or sit in a motorhome or something, put my hands on the wheel, close my eyes, and make runs. And I can make 20 runs in the time it would take me to do one walk. And so pretty much if I had have the course memorized today, then I'll go back and just, make runs in my head. Then the other thing I really have to learn is grip level. At Nationals, you amend that a little bit at Nationals because of how the courses will change, the groove will change as the event goes. I love being first. Something I've said this before, and people look at me like I'm nuts. I love being first heat Tuesday. I love being first heat Tuesday because I know that I can run my line and not be off the rubber or off the line. It is so awesome to do that because as the week goes on, that groove, not only is it the groove where the rubber's down, but it's also what's off of it, the grit and crap that's off that narrow line that everybody's running, that you just can't venture off. In 3 runs, you can't go off and blaze your own trail. It just doesn't work. So you kind of have to conform to what's there. And so that'll change over the course of the weekend, or a weekend. But no, if today, if I've got it down after a few runs, and then some days I'll take the approach. I'll go to a local event and walk it once, and I'll declare it a look-ahead day, where if I think I'm not looking ahead enough, it's like I need a day where I just figure out where the course is supposed to go, and then if I don't look ahead enough, then I'm not going to find it. I'm not going to be fast today. But if I force myself, I don't know where to go, and I have to look further ahead to be prepared for what's coming up. Then I'll, then that'll be an exercise I'll do. Not strange for me to do that at a local event a couple times a year, to just go out, walk once, and declare it a look ahead day. And if I finish, 10th instead of on the top 3 in the class because I'm teaching myself, well, the only real trophy that really matters to me is Nationals anyway.
No, and that's a huge one. I like the way you phrased that, look ahead day. I do that quite often for locals, which at times I beat myself up and say, no, I should treat it like Nationals and go walk 4 times. And on some of these smaller courses, actually I can't treat it like Nationals because Nationals is like 4 of these put together in complexity and stuff. But that's a huge thing for me. If I'm not driving well, it's probably because I'm not looking ahead. And sometimes it's like at BMW Club this last weekend when you have 7 or 8 runs. I have to remind myself, this is like a pro solo. You still have to look ahead. Because I swear I'm fastest. Like you said, Tuesday. I'd love to be first heat Tuesday every year. No one has any data or video they can look at. It's just let's go out there and drive. That's how I kind of like those days.
It's a driver. I was trying to remember the last. I think it was 2012 or 2013. I think we were first heat Tuesday. And I knew how I'd have to drive it if I wasn't. Like I was even walking it different with Jeanette because I knew that by 3rd or 4th heat that this groove, I don't know, it was a kind of a showcase turn on the airplane side in front of the timer. You came up and you had kind of a 180 angle, not quite 180. You came in at an angle, and I knew everybody was going to flare out to the left to make that 180 right, to land where they wanted to. And I'm looking at it, it's like, you can still make that turn and shave a bunch of time by going straight. So I go out and do that the first time. I'm driving back in, and somebody had data, and so I'm listening to it. But I'm listening to the announcer also. And the announcer was a close friend. He goes, James, look at the dirt coming up off this car. And I knew what it was because I wasn't driving where everybody else was. And so I had one of the guys who were helping me out. I said, go over and tell Chris to shut up about my line. I don't want everybody to see it. And it's like you said, he came over that night. We're sitting around the Atlanta tent. I'm really sorry about that. I said, no. I said, I knew you didn't realize that I was like blazing my own trail, and it didn't get embraced. But I think that I had, I don't remember the years. They all kind of blend together. But I might have had the lead, or I don't know, after the first day. I didn't win that year, so it wasn't quite as successful as I'd hoped. But anyway. That's something that kind of goes hand in hand with course walking. Is if you're out there, if you run later in the day and you get a midday course walk, you want to go out and see if anything's changed from when you walked it, how you remember it, as far as where the rubber is and where the dirt is. And so that's probably the only, a 2-day event you approach a little bit different, but usually they're a little more important too. So, but for the most part, 2-3 runs, memorize it, and that's enough. That's enough.
Yeah, no, I like that. And the whole nationals things, if you're running Thursday, Friday for sure, I just assume I have to drive the tightest line possible. That's pretty much what I tell myself. Stay tight as much as possible. You don't want the marbles.
Yeah, and it's you just gotta see, like if you're in the middle of a corner and you see a gap in rubber, then there's probably a bump there. Even though you can't feel it walking it, there's probably a bump there. And so those are things that you get out of a midday walk or the Wednesday or Friday walk that that you go out there and see what's going on and how it's maybe moving around a little bit. But that's all. It's all reactive. I mean, you want to be as informed as you can be when you make your first run, and build from there and be ready to change your plans and stuff. But once you're in the car, once you get the helmet on, it's all you. That's the sport. It's all you. Whatever you've done before doesn't matter. It's just what you're going to do now.
As you said, it's all you, and that you can make these notes, like seeing, I think what you're saying there with the pavement. So if you have brake marks and then a little dip, and then brake marks start again, there's some kind of bump there. And then you said after the run, you might come back. What do you tell people, or what is your process of, I finished a run, do you sit in the car and review it? What's that whole piece for you?
Probably, all the things I hated about the Heartland Park courses, one of the things that most people detested and I loved was the long drive back to my paddock spot, because it allowed me to be, no expectations. There's nobody wants to talk to you or anything. It gave you like 2 minutes of quiet time to go through the course in your head and remember it, kind of remember what you did, what you didn't do, what you wanted to do the next time, and kind of create a plan before you got back to get out of the car, changing numbers, tires, air pressure, all the things that for your co-driver, debrief, all that stuff. It kind of gave you a chance to go through that. And we get it. It's not bad at Nebraska. You still got a minute or two, depending on where your grid spot is, to kind of like think about the run and what you're going to do different before you have the mad rush of switching over, hosing tires and all the things that we feel are necessary to do in between runs. But that's about it. I keep trying to find something data wise that I can do in between runs, and haven't really come up with something that I felt really works for me. It seems as though, it works. Everybody uses, I say everybody, my co-drivers, both Jeanette and Fred, will kind of like use me as a benchmark. And so they get a lot out of watching what I do, and I don't get as much from them. It doesn't seem to, they might get a corner or something. And so data, I haven't really gotten them to a point where I really can get a lot out of data. Wish I could, but it just doesn't seem to work.
And that's where I wonder the suggestion. Yeah, Scott Fraser said he has somebody else look at it and tell him what to do. Some people might want to try that. That could be huge. Be like, oh, look, hey, this corner and this corner, that's it. So basically, there's no thinking to figure it out. Somebody said, hey, right here, you can do this tighter or better.
Try that. I've done that for Scott before. Watched his runs, and it's weird being East Coast or West Coast. We ended up at a Good Guys event a couple of years ago where I was just observing, and he said, "Would you go up?" And there was an awesome place to watch this particular course. I could get on top of the grandstands and look down on the course, and went out and just kind of watched 3 or 4 guys that I knew, and said, "This is what it looks like to me." I couldn't help them a lot because I was there helping specifically to help somebody else. And so, but Scott, took everything that you told him to heart, and you could see him make adjustments, and it turned out to be a pretty successful event for him. But Yeah, I'll listen to people that I respect, but it seems like, especially a local, that all the fast guys run at the same time, so you don't have good feedback from good observers like you do at nationals. At nationals, you get some good observers, but again, I kind of keep that close. Unless somebody's really respected, whatever Jeanette sees or Fred sees, and that's kind of, there may be one or two others that I consider experienced observers enough that I will take a suggestion from, but not many people.
That's a huge thing. I'm relating this back to business once again and life everywhere. Be careful who you're trying to learn from and take suggestions from. When I took the advanced driving school way back here years and years ago, I left with like all these things to fix. And it finally hit me. I'm like, I was already faster than pretty much everybody that instructed me. And I'm not blaming them, but I tried to change all those things. And I regressed like no other for several months. So I said, stop trying to change all that stuff. So yeah, who tells you something? Maybe they just didn't see, or what they're seeing isn't what was going to help you. Because once again, we may have different setups, may drive cars differently. That's huge to really not just take things to heart.
And kind of like suggestions are kind of like, I think a couple of years ago, we were at Dixie Tour, and Dixie Tour is kind of like the kickoff on the East Coast. And work and have good relationships with some pretty well, pretty successful autocrossers. And so I go out and make my first run, and all of a sudden, Sam Strano's in my pit. And he goes, "What are you doing out there?" I was like, "I don't know. It's just first run." He said, "Man, you've got to drop the hammer on the first run." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" It's like, I got 3 runs. I'll get it on the last run. He said, No, you gotta go hard the first run. And I kind of, I was kind of defending myself, but I kind of thought that I'd gone hard. So I said, "Where are you watching from?" So he had this spot about halfway down the course, turn into the lot that was blocked off, but he parked his truck there in the middle of the lot, and he's just sitting there observing people. So I said, "I'll do better tomorrow." Sure and crap, next morning, it's 8:05 and I'm on the line, and I look down the course. There he is sitting in his truck, and I go, "You better really drop the hammer on the first runner. He's going to be back here, giving me the dick." And I don't think Sam had ever, maybe once or twice, had given me any kind of advice at all. And it wasn't a bit about the course. It was just about my approach to the event. And so I went out, I pushed pretty hard on the first run, and it may have even been the fastest run I had of the day. But I was aware that he was there watching, and figured I had to react. And like, that's the kind of guy that you'll take general advice. He didn't say a thing about how I took a specific corner or anything. It was just my approach to the whole thing that I was under driving, and that's not usually a problem, but I will overdrive a lot, but I was under driving, and it was, it's March. It's a long way from September, and so I don't know. I just didn't come out as hard as I needed to, or he felt I needed to. So those things, there's quite a few guys that'll walk over and say, "Hey, try this," or "Hey, that." But that one really stuck out in my mind. It's like I don't think Sam and I had ever talked about, how we approached a day or how we approached a course, and it came by, and he was, he's like, you've got to push harder, and it's kind of easy to kind of fall back and say, well, I've been pretty successful, so I must know what I'm doing, and so this must be fine. But that little piece of advice that goes a long way, and obviously it's stuck in my mind. Some people, we're all busy at events, and so it's hard to get somebody who knows what they're doing to look and watch what you're doing, and you're their focus. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because when you said that, I remembered after I was leading Nationals day 1 back in D-Stock. Day 2, I ended up second, third, whatever. I didn't win. I didn't even win the day, obviously. And I left not having a clue. And Alex called me or texted me at some point, either that day or the next day, and says, "Hey, you just weren't driving hard." And that's invaluable information if I had it in between runs. But I couldn't even figure it out. Yeah. So if there's somebody that's been watching you, trust them, and you trust them, it must have been the next day or two. I was racking my brain actually on the drive home, going, "What did I do? I just didn't bring the same mental game of drive hard.
Yeah, and we're probably, in the point where, again, being successful is a double-edged sword. You're real proud of what you've done and stuff. But a lot of people would probably stand back and go, I don't want to tell him how to do something because, he may not take it right or he may not appreciate it in the moment. And it's like, it was really valuable to have that kind of feedback and have, and from others too, if somebody sees something, it's nice to have something. And, it's like, I may discard the whole observation. I may say you're full of crap and go on with my life, but it's neat to know that there are people watching you and stuff, but sometimes I think that we're afraid to. I try not to be that way. If I see something, I try to say something to people. It isn't always embraced, but I always like, if I see something I think you can do better, and you may be even a competitor of mine, and I'll go over and tell you what I see and, give you advice. And I'd like it in return. It doesn't always work that way.
That reminds me that after the last Pro Spring Nationals Lincoln, if you know who's working course when you're running, once again, somebody you can trust that's watching, I've got to follow back with Brian, who said, he was like, hey, you were braking a lot later than most people or something. I know I trail brake a ton probably. So I want to follow up with him and say, yeah, what else do you remember? What'd you see different? Because I can go and study video afterwards, but having somebody real time, especially at a pro between sessions, be able to give you that input. Pro. Yeah.
That pro format is so cool. And I think that's a real contributor to why we see people do so well on Sunday morning, is because they've got a lot of information. They've gathered a lot. They know what the course can do. And it's just huge. That's all. I mean, you can go back, do whatever your routine is, study data, study video. I'm more of a video guy. I kind of watch and see, but lots of times it just supports what you already know. Screwed up a corner. You felt it in the car the day you did, at the moment you did it. And I did the same thing. I came back from New Jersey Pro 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, however long ago it was, and said, first day I'm leading on one side. I'm close on the second side, but I got to come. Get up the next morning. God, I bet I was one of the first 5 on the lot at 6:30 in the morning. And I didn't care about the left side course. I had it. I was fine with it. The right side was kicking my butt. And I went out and said, I've only got really, I'm going to start on that side, so I'm going to have a cold tire run. And we all know, especially in front drive cars, what cold tire first run's like. So I got one shot at it. Basically I got one shot at it. I got a warm tire run, at this right-hand course. The start line had been a little tricky, so I was real conservative on my light. Went out, felt like I did everything right up to the next to the last corner as a sweeper. I went in, went a car length too deep, car slid a little bit, came back, slowed up by 0.2 and lost the event. And it's like, exactly what you did, but you still, you didn't execute, so you don't deserve to be successful. And that's our sport. They'll slap you in the head every time. You say, yeah, I know. And I had to sit in the car and think about it for 9 hours driving home. It's like, gosh, it was just a 0.2 mistake, a 0.3 mistake. I mean, it's easy to measure, and that was the difference between winning and finishing third, as it turned out. But it just, the sport will eat you up if you let it, And I went the next week and taught a challenge school and said, man, if I taught that challenge school the week before, I told Junior that the other day. It's like, if I taught that challenge school the week before I went to New Jersey instead of the week after, because I hadn't taught much this year. It's like, man, I'd have been on it. I'd have figured that out. I wouldn't have made that mistake. But you can't go back. There's no such thing as a perfect run either. If I wasn't critiquing that, then I'd critique something else. I haven't had a perfect run yet. So
yeah, no kidding.
I'm still trying.
At the events where I get lots of runs, eventually I'm thinking, I know there's more time out there, but it's become such a finer point between the braking zones or somewhere at entry that I keep wanting to have test days to try to figure out, I even think when I'm driving around on the street, even today, I'm like, man, I should be able to measure, like with a rolling thing, counting the feet, to know exactly, is it okay to add distance here versus there? There's these things I just want to have absolute answers for that we may never, especially once the surfaces change or more people have run. It's just not what I want it to be like. I want to know exactly what I should do everywhere. And that's where the driving comes in.
That's the hard part. I mean, this sport isn't easy. You know, it isn't like, you know, oh, I'm going around and the road racers out there might get upset. But I mean, at a track, you have 12 corners. They don't change every lap. And if you screw it up, you can turn around and fix it the next lap. Or you underdrove a corner, you can fix it the next lap, you know. But in autocrossing, I equate it a lot more like figure skating. I mean, you know, you got to be perfect. You know, you got to drive. You know, your goal is to be perfect, even though it's totally unachievable. You've got to be as close to perfect as you can be. Even when you make a mistake, you've got to minimize it. You've got to, you know, just let it go. You know, and the sport isn't easy at all. You know, it looks easy when you stand outside watching other people, but it's not easy. It takes a lot of work. You know, you'll get a guy who's been running 3 or 4 years. He goes, man, I'm within a second of so-and-so, the local hot shoe in his class. And I go, let me tell you something. That last second's the hardest one to find. You know, the first 5, they're the easy ones. You know, the last one is so hard. The last half second is so hard. You know, and hopefully it clicks for you. But, you know, you can't feel like you accomplished something to get within a second of a guy. I mean, that's you've still got a long way to go.
Oh, yeah, and I can now say it's so weird. This last Lincoln Pro Solo, I was like, hey, I was within 0.6, and somehow felt competitive. Yet a year ago, I was thinking, I win most all of these. But it's like, oh, wow, I haven't been in my car in a long time. And I was blown away being in Lincoln. I ran a good right side time that's pretty close to people. I was like, there was a lot of grip. Like, I felt a lot of grip. I told myself, you got to feel that all the time now. Like, you've got to get back in the groove of Lincoln concrete grip, and that's the level you have to stick at to be fast.
That's another problem a lot of people have, is a lot of us don't get exposed to concrete and Lincoln-type grip before that Salina-type grip. The stuff, and, you know, Topeka, all the places that we've run, I mean, would I'd be so much better if I had a similar lot, an asphalt lot like is predominant for most of us across the country all year to run. But we go to Lincoln, and it's like, especially somebody new gets there, and they underdrive so bad because they have no experience on a grippy surface, on a concrete surface. So they get out to Lincoln, and it's like, man, I always run right with XYZ, you know, in my region. And he's been to nationals a few times, and I haven't. Now I'm here, and he's kicking my butt. And it's like, why? It's like, probably you're underdriving. You don't understand. You know, the person who gets it the first time at nationals is the exception to the rule, because knowing grip, you know, understanding how much grip that lot has, or that surface has, that type of surface has, is really hard to learn. You know, I remember, you know, Salina, you know, on Crawford Street, the first time I went there, the grip was incredible. And I'm like, you know, same thing. I'm right there with everybody that I thought, and everybody that I normally would run with. It's like way out ahead of me, and they had experience on that surface, and that's what caused them to be much better.
Yeah, and that's where I question, as Junior said on the podcast, it's easier to teach somebody who overdrives, because if you're not overdriving and then having to come back, you get to higher grip lots like that, and you're even underdriving more because you're not even close to being able to like lose some grip and feel it and correct.
I was going to say that's a hard thing to overcome, is to understand how much grip that you have at these lots and how much more you can put down and adapt. And, you know, in most people's case, you know, especially in the old days when there was no such thing as a test course, you just showed up and ran. I mean, now we at least have a little bit of help, even though the test course grip and the actual race surfaces, God, it seems so like it's night and day to me. I'll go up and my car will be perfect on the test course. I'll go down and it sucks. I'm making air pressure changes and stuff to make it work on the other end. I don't know why it's different, but it just is. But it's not easy to adapt, and it was even harder in our history when we didn't have the luxury of having a test course.
Oh, exactly, and that's where I've not noticed the difference. I guess my key is, and especially watching videos of myself and other people, I know I'm over the limit when I'm having to correct because the car's sliding out or doing something else. That's how lately I've kind of realized, like, whoa, if you watch somebody, Highcott or anybody who's fast, they are mashing on the gas so much that they're having to open the wheel to catch the car, meaning they made it to and past the level of grip for even acceleration. And if you're never doing that, I would think, like, this whole concept of smooth, I've really thrown that out once I got to the Civic land of street tires. I realized, oh, yeah, I felt like people told me I was smooth on the Hoosiers. On the street tires, I feel like I'm having to really not be more abrupt, but just more inputs to get the maximum grip out of those kind of tires, I guess because they're softer or something.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of smooth, and I've found that as I've gone from, I always ran real low powered cars, in the late 80s I ran 80 horsepower Honda CRXs, and then I went back and revisited that again in the late 90s, and then even when I went to this chassis, we were still running 110 horsepower cars, and so smooth and short lines and all that stuff. You'd make the car. I'd want the car loose, the car to step out, but knowing that I could catch it by going back to the gas, and that was the way I drove. But when we went to power, we immediately doubled power when we built a street mod car, and have, constantly grown in miles. Like, I can't believe the horsepower that the car makes now for front drive cars. And so to know what we were at with power and how much different you drive, I think that really the 8th Street car has kind of reintroduced me to, just kind of making the car work a lot harder and being a little more abrupt with it and see what I can get away with, kind of thing, than I've ever wanted to do in the street mod car. But I don't know. We'll see. I haven't been in the street mod car in 2 months because it made me mad, and so I just parked it and played with the 8th Street car. And so next weekend we have a 2-day local, and then we'll go to Bristol for the 4-day extravaganza. And so I'll see how it translates back. I'm kind of hoping that it's made me better, because I really wasn't happy with the way I was driving the beginning of the year in the street mod car. Enough that, like I said, I just need to step away from it. It was making me mad. I wasn't having fun. So it was cool. It'll be cool. It'll be cool to get back in the car and see what it does.
Yeah, jumping back to what? Hoosier A7s?
We got off topic big there, but the autocross car runs A7s. The street mod car does, and I was on street tires the last month or so. So they do things a lot different, but it's kind of like life in slow motion, but it's all the same. The 8th Street car, it's got a fair amount of power for especially for an 8th Street car. It's got good power, and it's got a limited slip, but you don't have the grip that you have in the street mod car. So a lot of the things you drive it kind of the same way. It's just can't be as aggressive with it. But you can get on the gas a lot sooner in a corner. Not a lot unlike your STS cars. It drives a lot like that. You can get on the gas real early, and then when you get through the corner, you go, man, next time I can get on even earlier. And so you just keep backing that up, but because I've driven on street tires in 30 years, not competitively. I'd driven on them at schools, of course, but not like, out trying to win stuff. And it came in time. It's okay. It's okay. Like I said, it was a cool experiment. I will go back to that experiment at some point, but for now it was just something that I wanted to try. And Jeanette drove it. Every time I've put her in a street type car, street stock class car, she's made one run, got out, said, I'll never drive anything like that ever, because she relied on, she always relied on limited slips. And, these cars, these old, different stock class Hondas or STS cars she drove just didn't have the right combination. We didn't have power steering and didn't have limited slips. And so it's very hard for her to drive. she drove the Civic at a local event, I don't know, a month or so ago, and she said, "Yeah, I can see racing that." So that's kind of, at some point we have this fantasy we're going to just drag a car behind us in the motorhome, and a car do excursions, and we can still autocross, wherever we end up being. And so I think that at some point we're going to need a car like that can do both. And so as long as I have the right combination of car, then I'd like to just visit autocrosses around the country and teach schools and autocrosses around the country, and stay for the local event the next day kind of thing. And so hopefully that'll work out for us, and we'll do those and have some fun with it.
Yeah, I like that. My parents ended up, just to put a little thought in your head, for some reason the WRX, well, maybe not a WRX, and at least the Outback, so hopefully the WRX, can flat toe. Like, it's A-OK or something. Whereas he loved Hondas, but my stepdad's like, no, they're not rated for over 55 miles an hour or something. I'm like, they should be fine.
Yeah, and it's like, probably what I'd probably do is just have a front wheel dolly and a lower class stock class car. I'd like it to be something from Honda because I've kind of run them for the last 35 years. But I'm not opposed to something else that could work. I'm intrigued by other street class cars, and so it could be just about anything that I could probably put on a front wheel dolly. I'd say probably the only limiting factor today would be there would be a front drive car. Other than that, and even that doesn't have to come into play.
The Civic Type R is in America now. I don't think it's quite yet for sale.
Yeah, I know. I'm really hoping that the Civic Si turns into being a good car in a class that is classed well. But we'll see. Yeah, that's down the road. I'm, easily, I'd say that it's fair to say that we'll run the street mod car at least another year before I think that it's going to be a lot of work, and it's a lot of work to keep up with the others in the class. And so I'd say that that car will probably be over at the end of 2018 if I was going to guess, unless something big changes in my life. But we'll go to a little less intense type of car.
I can't imagine my Civic, now that I pulled the engine out and need to get the pieces worked on, is enough. It's like, oh my goodness, how long would all of a sudden the idea of having a stock car that then is reclassed the next year and you have to sell and buy another one? I'm like, it might not be that terrible of a thing.
So that's probably the biggest detriment in my eyes of street class cars is that it's not that there's instability in street class cars, because there isn't. But the new wave, and because of technology, the cars are better every year, and it's hard for the committees to come up. I totally love the committees. That's a hard job. Street class committee is probably the hardest class to keep up with because ever changing. Street prepared, usually you've seen cars for a year or two, and you can come up with a good one. Street mod is just, wherever they land, they land. But I mean, and I've been on those committees, but for the street class committees and the SEB, shout out to them, it's so hard for them to class new cars and put them in the right place right off the bat. And so, and it's kind of like a moving target, that they get it right sometimes and they don't get it right sometimes. And, I would love to have a car that I could say for the next 10 years, I can, run this car in this class, and it's going to be competitive and all that stuff. And I think that that's probably the only thing that probably scares me a little bit about street classes and needing the car of the year kind of thing. I don't know. There's some stability in some of the lower classes, but hopefully that doesn't come into play because I just prefer to not have a different car every year. I like getting comfortable with the car and just driving.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, let's have 100 classes so that every car is in its own class.
Yeah, and that's not feasible. I know that a lot of people would love, my car was the car to have last year in D Street, and now they reclassed them, and now it's no good anymore. They put it in another class or whatever. And that's, like I said, I admire those guys for even saying yes to being on that committee, because that's just a tough thing to do. I think that the other committees, there's challenges to all of them, and I've sat many a night in those meetings, committee meetings over the years, and to view street would scare the hell out of me.
Thanks for that heads up for all of us that thought, street class probably be easier. That's a good point. Heck no, you've got all these things to decide and people upset and
No, that advisory committee is not appreciated near enough. And like I said, they have a really hard job because every year it's different. The cars are different, and it would be great if they, just, I don't know. I don't have an answer for how to fix it. I don't know if there is a fix, but that's a tough one, and it's tough on the competitors too because they're trying to analyze cars over the middle of winter when things come out, when they come out with classes and new cars and all that stuff. And do I need to buy the latest, greatest car for the class I want to run in, or go to another class, and or just live with what I got? Hope it's still competitive, and it's not an easy job for them to do.
Yeah, lots of choices, and that's where Van Townsend, little shout out there, he's always sending me, hey, this car in this class. I'm like, you are insane, like how he's thinking about all these, oh, wait, this car's also in there, or this version. I'm like, Van, this is terrible. Just stop. I have enough cars. Should not have any more. Because some people love to think, which one will do well in here, and could I try that? And some people will truly experiment at that, whereas I just want to drive. I feel like you.
I have a little bit of that disease because I got to say, in New Jersey, I got beat by a Kia. Shout out to Jeff Yatsko, who got me in New Jersey. And he had a Kia. I never even would have thought about this car. Kia Sedan Turbo. And I came home and I started looking this, and the guy just must be a great driver because on paper the car should not be competitive. But he beat myself in a Civic and another well-respected driver in a Fiesta, which are acknowledged as being good cars for the class, and still he just outdrove us. And so it isn't always the car. So that's just food for thought.
Yeah, exactly. Like, how could that car beat me? And then some people show up with the wrong tires. Like, it's saddening at times. I know that somebody at the last pro, they didn't buy the tires that are the top 2 or 3 tires to buy in street class. It's like they just don't. When you don't know, you don't know. So, that's one thing that people have asked. For new people, you being an instructor, what kind of advice do you have for somebody new? From, do they start in a street car? Do they start in a prepared? Do they start with whatever they have, bring it, race it, figure it out for a year, 5 years?
Yeah. I'd say newbies, take whatever you got. Don't worry about, my car doesn't fit in this class, or I might not win. You're probably not going to win anyway. So you go out, and have fun. It's this sport, especially at the beginning, should be a lot of fun. Wow, I get to drive my car on a course. I'm racing. I got a helmet on. It's the whole novice experience should be one of fun. Not, oh God, I got to buy this tire, that tire. Think back to, I got in trouble once with a guy called up. When I was selling Hoosiers, and this customer called up. Hey, I went to an autocross last week. That was when Hoosiers were legal in stock class. And it's like, I went to this autocross last week, and I lost by 5 seconds. It was my first time ever. And the guy who beat me had Hoosiers, so I want to buy a set of those tires. And I wouldn't sell them to him. And the owner came in and said, were you really just talking to the guy out of buying a set of tires? I said, absolutely. He said, why? He said, because the guy's going to put the tires on, but he's not going to have the right, the other stuff, the suspension stuff that he needs to. Tires are going to grip, and he's going to land on his roof. I said, I've seen it 3 times. It's like, he'll come back. He'll be our customer for life because I told him the truth. I told him not to go out and buy these tires today. Go out, learn how to drive, have fun. And like I said, because today we have novice classes and we have novice trophies and stuff, if I was out there racing, like when I started, I said the first week, you didn't have a novice class. You just jumped right into the deep end with all the good guys. I was 6 years before I won a local event. 6 years before I won a local event. And it wasn't, if I was somebody who got discouraged early, I would have quit after a year or two. But I had to race against guys who were national champions and, finished good at big events and stuff. And so that was what we had in our region. I probably would have been real successful if I lived in some little region, but because we were 200, entrant events and probably I was in E stock at the time or a low stock class, there were probably 15 or 18 cars that I had to beat. If I finished in the top 10, it was a big day. To finally win one was unheard of. The trophy still hangs out in the garage from the first one I ever won. It's because it was a big deal. So novices, new people, don't worry about car setup. Don't worry about that stuff. Obviously, I'm a big fan of, if you started to play golf, you might get a golf lesson or two, tennis, skiing, all those things. It's not strange for somebody who's just thinking about getting started, take a lesson or two. Same thing. Do your local novice school. Do your, Evo comes to town. Take an Evo school or whatever's available to you. If you really think you might like it or you want to be good at it, that's like such a supercharged way to get better is take advantage of these opportunities that you have. Run a novice class. Take the driver advocate or whatever you have in your group in your area and take their advice. Let them ride with you. Learn the stuff that you can learn. Like I said, a guy who takes an Evo school is a year ahead of somebody who tried to learn it all on their own. It was like I said, what took me 6 or 7 years, usually you can get out of a guy in a year who takes advantage of what's offered to him in our sport. Do it. Take that stuff and don't feel like, oh, I'm embarrassed, I'm hitting a lot of cones or anything. Soldier on. It'll pay off in the other end.
That's several good points right there, like hitting cones. So many people aren't even close to cones, so hit them to begin with so you kind of start figuring out where they're at. You'll see the marks in your car. And just spend the money on the seat time, not necessarily the better tires or the wheels and tires or the other car. As you pointed out, bring whatever you have and just get the experience of becoming a better driver, just like if you go to a school. Just bring what you have.
But I go back years, and I always called our sport a picnic sport. It's really, and if you go to local events, you see guys that still embrace that thought, where they're coming out, they show up, they have a helmet and an air gauge, a cooler with a sandwich and a Coke, and they just go out and run. They just do it because they enjoy, the camaraderie, they enjoy the competition, they enjoy just driving their cars. And it's so hard to get sucked into this, this national vortex that we deal with and not pay attention to those guys around us, those local guys around us that they're really the backbone of the sport. And they're guys that they know they're not going to win anything. They know they're not going to, maybe a good day as a top three, in a 10-car class or, they have realistic goals. But those guys are having so much fun just driving their cars, and the sport benefits so much from having those guys. I mean if a lot cost us $3,000 and only 20 guys who are really good showed up, we wouldn't have the lot. So those guys that are coming out and just having fun, knowing that they have no desires to go to national championships, they're not jacket guys, they're just guys. They're out there, guys and girls. Let me emphasize that, guys and girls, they're just out there having fun, and that's the way it should be. They're the people that pay the money to come in and have a good time and offset those expenses, so that some of us sillier people that want to take this way too seriously can have a place to go out and practice and run and keep the sport alive.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many different groups and types of people. Of course, we morph from one thing to another, that come out and enjoy it for so many different reasons. And I've even realized having a family now, I don't hang around near as much as I used to. It's like, no, I'm starting to feel guilty. Let me go knock out some things over here and get back home. So I've realized even for me, things have morphed. I'm like, they'll talk about, this person. I'm like, but I've not been hanging out the last 2 years. I do more events out of town sometimes than in town.
Yeah, and it's easy to get into that rut of not knowing, not recognizing those people that are there. And like I said, you see the ads on TV about about collegiate sports, like this many people that are playing sports will go on to win, to go on and play professionally. And that's kind of the way our sport is like there's so many people that participate in our sport that have no intention or even desire to move on and do high level autocrossing. Their goal may be a match tour as opposed to doing or state championship kind of thing. That might be the big takeaway for them. That may be the only thing they do. That's their big event of the year. They buy a set of tires at the beginning of the year and they run, and that's their autocross life. But they're still they still want to compete. They still want to win. They still want to have fun. But it's just they're the people that keep our sport alive.
Yeah. Like you're saying, the people in the committees, we got to thank them. Even the street committee, not even thinking about that. Like, oh man, you're having the fun of classing all this stuff. The people running the events, being chiefs of different things. There's lots of things going on behind the scenes that I think people that don't stick around very long have no clue.
Well, I mean, they always know what to bitch about when there's a problem. They always know that. They always know that Joe's on that committee and he voted against what I want. So he's the bad guy. But lots of times, I mean, I didn't embrace having the relationship I have with Hoosier. I didn't embrace the street tire thing right away. And so, but I got out and talked to people. Through my ability to do Evo schools, I got out to talk to people, and for the membership, it was tough for that group to propose that, carry it out. But in the long run, it's going to be so much better for our sport, for that drive into the core, drive into the lot, because it was getting really expensive, for a stock class guy, a casual autocrosser, to come in and race and have to spend $1,200-$1,500 for a dedicated set of tires. And I know all the arguments about, well, you need this one for hot, and this one for cold, and this one for rain, but for that casual autocrosser, that guy, that he's just going to buy one set. He's going to buy the middle of the road tire that's pretty good in the rain, pretty good in the dry, and go on with his life. He's going to have fun autocrossing. But today he can drive that to the event and drive on it and race on it and go home and put his car back in the garage and drive it to work the next morning and on the same tires. And to me, that it took guts to propose it and to carry it through. And those guys should be applauded because it was a great move for our sport.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, the ST classes were growing anyway. It was like, oh my goodness. I mean, That's what I did. Like you said, the fact that I took 14 tires to nationals for the Pro Solo and Championship for that Type R because I knew those front tires were great for 12 runs, and then I wanted to be on the pointy end. I mean, I didn't change tires every single run like some people have, but yeah. Oh, the best advice you said, people bitching. John Ames said, hey, you're going to do course design. Someone's always going to complain. You're not going to make everybody happy.
Sure.
And
exactly.
And
it's like classing cars. There's going to be good ones and there's going to be bad ones, but you don't want overdogs in the next class down, and those guys. It's hard. It's not an easy job.
Yeah, and once again, there's no perfect run. There's no perfect classing for all these different cars either.
No, we haven't figured out the spec classes like they have in road racing yet. I don't know that even that would even the field, but
I'm voting for it.
That's a thought that gets bounced around from time to time. Maybe someday it'll come to fruition, but I think that's the biggest detriment to the street classes today is that we have so much technology coming in at such a fast rate that it's very hard for cars to stay competitive for years and years and years. I know there's a few classes that they try for it, but it's very hard for that to happen.
Yeah. Oh, so tell us some of these standard questions I have, like left foot, right footing. What would you tell people? What do you do?
I'm a left foot breaker. Jamie, I dedicated 1983 to learning left foot braking. So when people say to me, I want to learn about, what about left foot braking? I say, are you ready to commit a lot of time to learning it? Does right foot braking come natural to you? Can't tell you how many nights I've sat up, bunking with another instructor, arguing the pros and cons of left foot to right foot braking. It's I lost a lot of sleep because guys wanted to discuss it, and it falls right back in the categories. There's no right way or wrong way to autocross. Do I left foot? Yes. I can't left foot without a helmet on. I've learned. I have to have my helmet on to left foot brake. Street driving, I can't do it. I can't do it on the street at all. I don't practice it other than when I have a helmet on. I've tried a couple back roads, and I'm done with it. Did it on the track for the 15, 18 years that I track drove. I always left foot braked, but I only do it with a helmet on. And the only thing that it's hard to learn how much to use it. A lot of people will overuse their left foot brake. They'll drag it all the time. And, they'll mash, an exaggeration, they'll mash the gas and modulate speed of the brake, and that's not the way to do it. The only thing that I've argued and will continue to argue is, how can you tell me you're not losing time moving your foot back and forth between pedals instead of blending from one to the other? If one foot is dedicated brake and one foot's dedicated gas, and if 2 feet have got to do it better than one. And so that's where I'm at with left foot braking, is that I always walk away and nobody's been able to give me an answer of why they can be faster right foot braking when they lose time, and we're in a sport where thousands of seconds count, how they could go faster. Is it hard to learn to do right? Yes. Are there many people in our sport that do it right? There's a fair amount. There's a lot of them that do a lot more that do it wrong, that over slow the car, overuse it, and are not proficient at it. I'd like to think I'm one of the ones proficient at it, but that's just the way I've always driven.
Yeah, and that's a big thing. Even though I left foot brake, I've been thinking and saying on this podcast, like you just described it perfectly. You dedicated a year to figuring it out. That's what I think it would take for somebody to get a clue. Yeah. And yet I do it on the street sometimes in a big truck or whatever SUV. If I'm in a little car, I do it also. So I do practice some there just to be in the practice of how smooth can I come off. But it's so key to realize it's just not going to happen. And I do love the point on these newer cars. You may not get away with it at all. Exactly.
I got a German car, Volkswagen Golf, maybe something like that, a while back, and it won't allow you to left foot brake or blend, because when you put your foot on the brake, it takes power away from the motor or killed the motor. Because I got out of the student's car and I go, I think there's something broken in your car. And I told him what I was doing. He goes, no. He said it won't allow you to left foot brake. Thank God Honda hasn't embraced that technology, so it hasn't bit me in the butt with Hondas. And that, that's, who knows? Maybe the newer cars do. I don't know. But that's probably the only thing that, again, technology gets in the way of, of the way we drive. But hopefully that's just where I am.
Yeah. And one thing,
luckily, I drive old cars.
And debating is it better in the Porsche rear engine, when I finally came back from nationals and made myself only right foot brake somewhat, I do wonder if I can accomplish the same thing of left foot braking by lifting and then left foot braking, which once again kind of defeats the purpose of blending. But it seemed like if I would only right foot brake, maybe the lift in between the brake would help it rotate some. And that may have just been that car with its setup. But that's the only thing I can figure out why you might be faster if you can equally brake with your left foot as you could your right.
Yeah, and there are times when that I found myself in especially in the it's sad that I refer back to my most recent foray, but in the 8th Street car, that a lot of times that I wanted to go to the brake, a couple of observers said, why don't you just try a lift there, and it was enough. And the difference is because the street mod car approaching that corner would accelerate so much quicker that I would need to like tap the left foot to get, weight on the nose to make it turn, and the lift, and wouldn't bleed off as much speed that was so precious in the H Street car. So I think that it's just like everything else, and it's going to be kind of car dependent kind of thing. But I would say if front drive cars, if you've got the time, and not so much rear drive cars, but it seems to be the trend is a lot of rear drive guys are right foot breakers, and whereas front drive, I don't know, it came out of rallying, I think, back in the day. I remember reading a comic strip about front drive. So there was some rally driver that started showroom stock driving a Saab or something, and he kicked butt because he left foot braked and could trail it into a corner and stuff like that. But I think that's where I got the idea.
Oh, and I got to point out, since somebody taught me break versus broke, I'm still doing it wrong, but I've noticed you're doing it right. So there's hope for me. Anybody listening? Right foot braked, not broke. I don't want to be broke. I want to be rich. I don't want a right foot brake.
Yeah.
Or left foot brake. Yes.
Yeah. And so it's again. I think that to kill off the topic is that whatever works best for you.
Yeah, and don't just think you're going to change it for a day and figure this thing out. That's the other thing. I did the same thing. I didn't expect just to do it. I just realized in a turbo car, I'm like, wowzer, it takes a while for that boost to build back up. So
you've got to commit. You've got to commit to that. If you firmly believe that is the way to go, that you're going to commit to left foot braking. Be ready for it to take a chunk of your season out to learn it. And it could be just that I was a slow learner too.
Exactly. You're taking your vitamins. This might go a little quicker for you.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's, what do you think? You've driven lots of front wheel drive. Do you have advice for people if they want to transition from one to the other? I was surprised to hear Junior started in front wheel drive, hopped in rear wheel drive, and just it seemed more natural to him, or as natural.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know if it's fair to call Junior a phenom or something, but Junior's good in anything. I watched a guy challenge him just last week. Say to him, "You can't do that with a car," and he did it. And the guy who challenged him said, "I can't believe you just did that." And it was like, nobody will ever know about it, but unless they pay attention to Facebook or something. But it's like the guy was just passing, just sitting there. We were a bunch of us talking. He goes, "I bet you can't do this with that car." And he didn't even flinch. I said, "I can't believe you just said that to him," because there's nothing he's afraid of. And that kind of goes over to front drive. I mean, he'll just jump in. I mean, he's jumped into my car a few times, and within two attempts, he's faster than I am. And that's awesome that he has that ability to do that. And it's kind of that goes back to his, what he gets exposed to. I can get into a rear drive car, at our schools, I can teach and talk and drive proficient at 80%. Now, if you tell me to get into your rear drive car and go 100%, then I'm going to struggle a little bit. Not, it's just a little. I just have to remind myself what I'm in and what I'm doing. Lower horsepower, I'm a little better at than higher horsepower. Put me in a crappy old Miata. Rear drive, street tires, not too bad. Put me in, imagine a street modified, Miata. Probably I wouldn't be so good at it because, the limit, you can get over the limit real easy. So it's, and probably your Porsche is the same way. It's easy to get over the limit. You got a high-powered car, you're probably on street tires, so you can overdrive a lot, and so you just have to, analyze what you're in and get out of it as much as you can. But like in a school situation, if I get into a Corvette, SSR or A Street or something, Corvette, and go out and drive the car at 80% and observe the student at 80, driving at his max speed, it's not really hard for me to do that. talk as I'm driving, explain to the student what I'm doing. But when they say, all right, we're going to go heads up, it would probably take me half a season to get good at that particular vehicle. And I'm confident that I could run rear drive semi-competitively, today without any problem, but it would take practice. I'd have to adjust my approach a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, just because I'm like you, front-wheel drive mostly, I would think it's all about what I do when I'm just over the limit, where in the front-wheel drive car, I've lifted, I've rotated, or somehow I got over the limit. I know to open the wheel and add gas, and that's programmed in, whereas in the Corvettes, I'm always like, oh, my goodness, do not mash that gas pedal. Do not mash it when you usually mash it, which I took an FSP car, rear-wheel drive, and spun it because of that. So that would be the biggest thing would take me time to learn.
Yeah, and it's just respect. And a lot of times you'll be with a student or co-drive, ride with somebody, and they'll go, man, there's a straightaway. I've got to get to the floor, and it's like you've got to respect the power that's under your foot. And sometimes you can, it would probably be a statement to say that in most SSR A Street events, that if the guy gets to the floor once or twice during the course of a normal event, that would be probably pretty special. That you've got to use what you can use, but you can't overdo it. If you go to the floor, you overdrive a corner. It's not it. I mean, you watch the good guys in those cars, and they brake so early, and they're so prepared for a corner, and they know that where they're going to gain their time is going to the gas, coming off a corner. There's not many students that I've had in my life who have that, if they're listening, that haven't heard this statement. A good autocrosser finds his time coming off a corner, not going in. Going in is going in. If you brake too early, just go back to the gas early. Minimize that mistake, fix it the next run. But a good autocrosser comes off a corner, and that's where he finds time, getting back to the gas. And so if you take that approach to that Corvette, and you roll into the gas early, but you still maintain your grip level and, the angle of the back end and all the things that we have to analyze, and just drive off a corner, right away that you did it right. And so and you get to the next braking zone and go, man, I'm going a lot faster this time than I was last time. And so that's where autocrossers find time. The late braking exercise, another thing that students have heard a lot. The only time that works is on a track, when you're trying to beat a guy to a corner. But neither way, you're trying to take away his perfect line by compromising and take part of his perfect line and hopefully overtake him. But either way, that's not the fastest way you can go through that corner. And in autocross, the fastest way through the corner is the guy who's winning.
Yeah, that's interesting. That made me remember Brian Peters saying he would slow early. He cares about the exit. That's all he cares about. And I feel like I am such a late breaker, and I've tried to change this over the years, and I revert and say, no, I've slowed down. I'm not competitive anymore, or not as competitive. That for me, I feel like in a front-wheel drive, I'm seeing how far into the corner I can carry that speed, which is exactly what at the Pro, Brian's working course. He's like, yeah, you are braking so much longer. Therefore, the next question is, but did I get on the gas as soon? And would you change it up at all for front-wheel drive, or still really focus on that?
No, I still believe, and again, this is something that probably every student I've ever had has heard this, is like, if you want to get on the brakes early, so you're under control in the corner, so you can get to the gas early, coming off. If you're out of control, if you, in the case you just described, where you broke later than everybody else, if you were not in control from the beginning of your steering input to the exit of your steering input, if you were not in control, then probably somebody else was doing that corner faster than you.
And how would I judge myself for being in control in the corner? Is it just a push, or are there other things like having to correct?
Is the car pushing? Is the back end loose? Are you able to put it in the position you want it to be in? If there's a spot you're going for close to the cone, close to the exit cone, all the places, is that corner as perfect as you can make it, as you intended to make it? And that's the hard part to analyze as drivers. Is like, could I have done that, a mile an hour faster? Could I have done it? And that's kind of, lots of times that's the difference between winning and losing is. Like if you can carry an extra mile an hour or two through the corner and get to the gas earlier, and your exit speed is 2 or 3 miles an hour faster than your competition, then that's how we win by a tenth or lose by a tenth. All these little things, and it starts the second you let the clutch out. As for the next 45, 50, 60 seconds, I'm going to be perfect, and I'm not accepting less than perfect. My hands are going to be where they should be all the time, and that's the mentality at our level, at the pointy end level, that we have to strive for.
And that's where one thing I remember, it was, I don't know if it was an Evo start school at the Pro Solo down in Houston, I think it was, Ann Hollis.
Uh-huh.
She goes, how you pull up at your level matters. And I was like, oh, yeah, no, I said, I'm really picky about that. But in this little school with her, I was not being picky. Yet this last autocross, I'm like, I'm going to line up all the way over by that cone, probably within 3 or 4 inches of the start cone, to get the right angle. And it's little things like that that I don't know what they add up
That's
to.
That's free time.
But
That's free time.
Yeah, it's free. It's knowing that it's free and knowing that it's, I guess, available.
Yeah, it's like you want to start, like, from the time you roll up to the line, you're thinking, what's the best? Now, in a Pro Solo, that could move a little bit. You may want to be somewhere, but if nobody else is going over there and the rubber's, a foot in from that far right or left cone, then you may have to say, well, I'd like to be over there. There's no rubber over there, so when I dump the clutch, I'm just going to go up and smoke. Then that's the adjustment compromise that you as the driver has to make.
Yeah, it's there are so many just little things to even think about, and that's where the placement. Where are you placing your car on the course? And I may have to redo this last video I just made yesterday, like a coaching videos I put out sometimes. One thing, I'm not sure how you would think about this or not, but I realized after listening to Paul Russell, having cheats, places where you might normally set up, but in the case of there's not enough speed to worry about the next entry, not setting up. This course was full of short little like 3-cone slaloms or offsets into 180s. And it hit me while I was driving. I said, you just lifted to try to late apex that cone, but there's no payoff at the end. So luckily, like run 2, I realized, what the heck are you doing? This is another cheating place. Do y'all instruct that at all, or do you ever think about something like
the instruction part, probably it's fair to say that as instructors we go for the low-hanging fruit. What can we give to that student that will give them the most bang for their buck? And so we focus on getting behind the first cone, getting to the backside of the first cone, in our phase 1, our beginning school. It's like, you launch the car, you're facing a 5-cone slalom, how do you want to approach it? And, a lot of people will they'll start out blowing by the first cone and start slaloming, for example, at the second cone. But there's a straightaway on the other end, and so if they do, in the structure that you're shooting for, there's a straightaway coming off the slalom before the next element. And so if they blew by the first one, then they're probably going to be a little out of position for the last one. They aren't going to be able to get to the gases early. And so our proponent will be, get behind the first cone, give it up going in, and take the benefit, being able to get back to the gas at the end to get to the straightaway. So for that particular scenario, it works great. Now, if you say to me, I've got a long straightaway coming up to a 3-cone slalom that's followed immediately by 180, all of a sudden that first cone doesn't matter as much. You might be better. You might be able to take advantage of burying it past the first cone, get around the second one, and then set yourself up for that 180. So nothing is perfect. Nothing is, the answer for everything. In a lot of situations, getting to the backside of the cone is the correct thing to do. But there are some exceptions to that rule where, I can blow right by that first cone, maybe tap the brake, put a little weight on the nose, and get around that middle cone, and treat it more like a Chicago box than a slalom. And maybe that would be a little better, a little faster to do, and it would gain me some time because I'm taking the speed coming in, where normally slow in, fast out is the correct thing to do. maybe it's not always that way. That isn't a rule that cannot be broken always.
Yeah, and
kind of like that I before E except after C, which really messed me up in school. And it's like, and still does. I'll still look at words. Is this one of the ones that the I goes before the E? And it's the same with that as that. Is you go in and you go, man, I think that I can gain some speed by not getting behind that first cone, because it's got an obstacle, a slow obstacle after it. That's kind of my rule of thumb there.
Yeah, no, good point. Same type deal. So as you were saying, like diving in, that's where Brian Peters was like, oh, you should never brake going into a slalom. But for me, I feel like in front-wheel drive, I've done that so often. If there's nothing, there's no payoff. If it gets tighter and tighter and tighter, I'm just trying to carry speed into it as far as I can, especially in the pro format. Sure. To do that.
And again, you may be doing the same thing, but your approach is different. A guy, my thought on diving in or going into to a slalom and getting to the backside, some guys can achieve that depending on the circumstances with a lift of the gas. What your ultimate goal is to put weight on the nose to make the initial turn in, so then you can execute that pendulum effect through that slalom. Okay, but if you can achieve it by just lifting off the gas to do it, that's fine. If you're a left foot braker and you tap the brake to get weight on the nose to make the car more efficient at the beginning, you've done the same thing. He's used the other guy that just lifts may just be he may be using engine braking to put weight on the nose. His whole idea is to shift the weight to the nose of the car so the car reacts better, so he can initiate that pendulum. Now a lot of guys will on and off the gas through a slalom. Mostly rear drive cars will do an on off to help the car rotate back and forth through a slalom. I'm a guy that just my approach is I want to be behind the first cone in a slalom followed by an acceleration zone. I want to be behind the slalom, behind the first cone. However that's achieved, I want to be steady state till get to the next to the last cone, and then I want to start rolling I want to roll in the gas, because I've created space for myself to get back to the gas early to come off the slalom fast. And students will hear a line from me that'll come out. It's kind of like putting money in the bank, and I stole it from another instructor. Tim Aro gets credit for this. It's kind of like putting money in the bank. You put a little in at the beginning, you take it out with interest at the end. And so that's my approach to slaloms. Is if I can be on target, be where I want to be when I get to the next to the last cone, or if it's pretty wide, even a third to the last cone, then I can start rolling into the throttle, and I can afford to be late on the end ones and carry speed out.
Exactly, and that's where I can think of that of Bob Tennell once again tapping in slaloms, and then the rear-wheel drive car. He's a left foot braker. And then we did a little practice day a couple weeks ago, and I caught Salil going, man, you were really adding a lot of gas back and forth in there. And he goes, I said, I think it's too much. And he goes, wow, that made the whole day worth it. So when we're moving this weight, is it for weight transfer just to get the front to bite to make it a pendulum? Or are we trying to get the car to be loose?
Yeah, I want the car to bite at that, especially at the first cone. When I'm car placement, I mean, the first cone is easily the most important cone of a slalom. You've got to be in position. If you start out late, you're never going to get it back. You're always going to be late. So your only opportunity to be early or in a slalom is at the first cone. That's the only chance you have of being early. If you're late at the first cone, you're late all the way through. So if you're in position and you put weight on the nose so the car dodges or gets to the backside of that cone as we talk about instructing, and then you don't bleed off too much speed. My goal is to get to the speed that I think or I know can get me through that slalom. So then I steady state. Maybe this is a front drive thing, but I steady speed through the slalom. But I've already got that rotation that as I refer to as a pendulum effect, which is what we're kind of doing going through a slalom. So if I'm still early, 3 cones from the end, if it's a 6-cone slalom or if it's a 5-cone slalom, if I'm still where I want to be, if I'm still early, then that affords me the ability to go back to the throttle and be late toward, because I pick up speed, be late at the end, but I'm carrying my momentum out. But if you start out late behind the first cone and second cone, then you're still struggling to get around that last cone, and you can't carry as much speed out of the slalom. So that's, in a nutshell, a perfect approach to a slalom. Now, if the slalom is an equidistant and there's change, you've got to make a change in the middle, then a lot of that goes out the window, and you just have to drop the slalom based on how it's presented to you.
That's what we had this last event. It tightened up and then opened back up, and man, is it painful when you are behind. And that statement of, if you're late, you're late, it's so hard.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I even know, so I slow down.
That's what the course designer wants you to do. He says he's making you pay twice. You're paying because you're late, and now all of a sudden he tightens it up, so that makes you even more late. And it's just so that mistake of not being behind the cones, that the first one bit you twice instead of it just biting you once. And that's what the course designer, in their dastardly thoughts is just I'm gonna make this guy pay. He's late at the beginning. Now, lots of times, if it only is a step out, in the middle, if it tightens up only a step, then it will only get those guys that are late. A guy that was early has created enough space for himself, so that's kind of just a blip on the radar. He was a little closer, but he knows it opens up, and that's why when you walk the course, you gotta know what you're dealing with in a slalom. Pace that slalom. Know in your head exactly how much distance there are between the cones at a slalom. If you lose 2 steps or you gradually losing 2 steps, then your approach is how you're going to drive it is going to change.
Yeah, that bit me. Luckily, we had 7 runs there, but I'm like, it was hard to get into this because it was an offset to the hard side to get back over for the slalom. So it was so important to really slow that speed down, and then it tightened up. And then it got bigger, so it could bite. Oh, here's something Junior mentioned that I did practice at the practice day. Looking at the last cone in the slalom, so I practiced that, Salil practiced that like no other. But when I got to the pro, at first I went out the window again because for so many years I haven't done that. What are your thoughts on where you're looking in the slalom?
Well, as an instructor, that's what you're telling folks is that. But the other thing, and like I said, former students have heard this, is like you got to teach yourself not to stare at a cone. Like if you're sitting at a line in phase 1 and you're looking at a slalom that you're about to, that's your initial obstacle as a slalom. And as instructors will say, look at the last cone of the slalom and trust your peripheral vision. But in reality, what that last cone of the slalom does for me is it defines the furthest most point I'm looking on the course. I find myself scanning back and forth from where I am to that point, and that point is a moving target. Once I let out the clutch, that it may stay with that point. Maybe the point I'm looking at in a 5-cone slalom, maybe to the second one, and then I'm jumping ahead to the next obstacle. So you're always, that's that, being prepared for what's coming up next, that looking ahead, that thinking ahead, that's always what you're thinking about. You're always, like asking yourself, what's next? Where do I need to be to prepare for the next obstacle that's in front of me? And so, yeah, I'm looking at the end of that slalom, but I got to always remember that these different, key cones, or there's a phrase we use a lot in instruction, is like knowing that's going to be my furthest most point. When I'm looking ahead, I wanted to find the furthest most point I'm going to look, and then scan back and forth.
Yeah, and
I probably got that from another instructor too. I think scanning I probably learned from Andy Hollis.
Yeah, I don't know why I've always scanned, but so in the slaloms, I'm always looking up, looking back, noticing if the cones are straight or crooked, and being upset about that. So too much scanning probably on my part. But this looking at the last cone, we set up at first it was like a 6-cone slalom into this little practice course, and then we made it an 8-cone, and you had to turn around and come back another 8 cones. But what was amazing was when you looked at that last cone as you drove there, as you approached, it was so easy to look out of the slalom to the next key cone or key gate. It was amazing how me scanning somewhat in a slalom, I probably don't look as far ahead out of it. I might be able to memorize, hey, I'm going fast here. But when I did that, it was so easy to move your eyes just slightly and go, hey, I'm going over there next, which reminded me of Brian Peters, Evo instructor, at the test course at Nationals. He kept saying, get out of the slalom, get your eyes out of the slalom. And that didn't I was like, why is he yelling this? What? I'm in the slalom. I'm like beginning the slalom. Why are you telling me to get my eyes out of the slalom? But if I was looking at the last cone, like at the practice, all of a sudden that was easy. And once again, the peripheral vision, and asking Salil, the eye doctor, it's like interior. I was like, peripheral's off to my sides. He said, no, it's the closer end that is a peripheral vision.
Yeah.
It's night and day. So if people can practice that, like me, if you've not done it like that, it's probably going to take a while. But now I can look way up. And honestly, I don't think I'm looking at the last as I enter because, like you said, the first cone is the most important. I am very focused on how I go by that cone. But then just look all the way down.
Yeah, and peripheral is something that we use all the time. You know, you're looking, and some people are gifted and Junior can look in the rearview mirror and do a whole course without looking at the course. I don't have that. I don't have that ability. He thinks everybody does, but I don't have that ability, and most people I'm standing in front of don't have that ability. But if you bring it back to real life and say, all right, I'm at the grocery store and I'm in the cereal aisle and I'm looking for Cocoa Puffs, all right, and I'm driving down, looking ahead, and I'm looking, the shelves go up and down. There's maybe 4 or 5 shelves worth of different cereals, and you're scanning up and down, but you're still going straight while you're doing it with your buggy. And it's the same darn thing. It's like, okay, there's the Sugar Pops, and you jump ahead, and there's the Frosted Flakes. You jump ahead, and there's the Cocoa Puffs right there. And so you use it all the time, but you just don't think of it as peripheral and scanning. But if you think about it, then you do use that all the time. I have a corner on the way to work that's like it's more than a 180. It comes to a point. I have to drive into it, and it's uphill, and I have to look through the trees. And I know that if there's nobody coming on the other side of the trees, I can drop into the apex in the other lane and gas out of that corner, and it's exhilarating. But I watch everybody else, and they stay in their lane, and they're real cautious, even maybe stop in the middle of the corner, because they don't know what's on the other side. What we as autocrossers want to do is we want to know what's on the other side. We want to know what it's going to take to get to be the most efficient through that corner. And we can't do it when we get there. We have to, feed the information to our brain so it can comprehend what it's got to do and find the smoothest, easiest, least obstructed course of taking that corner. And that's autocross, and that's what we do.
Yeah, no kidding. And how much of this, I try to practice some of the stuff on the street from back when I was driving the Integra. I would turn my mirrors down and see how close I was to the stripes on the road. I'm always thinking cut distance, so I go across the white line, especially on the entry to I-25 where it's the tightest line. They have the lines in the wrong place. I'm even thinking this stuff, maybe it's insanity a little bit, but I'm trying to think that I can practice anytime I'm driving at some level.
You can. Now, it's not. It's probably the safest way to approach it is to, as you're saying, stay in your lane all the time. But I've blessed with it. For the last 15 years or so, I've had this wonderful drive to work. It's all back roads, no interstate, up hills, down hills, sharp corners. It's an awesome drive, and very rarely do I talk about it. But it's a really cool drive. And for years, I drove a car back and forth to work exactly like my autocross car, seating position and dimensionally and all that. And so it was not unusual for me to all right, today we're practicing looking ahead, driving to work, and do that. There were a couple of corners that I challenged, and I also played gas mileage too, and being as efficient as I can with the gas. But all that time that if you say I'm going to drive. And I've always got to stay in my lane. You look at the white lines as those are cars, and if I get into the white lines, I'm going to hit one. It's going to be a penalty, and I don't want penalties, so I don't want to hit that. But yeah, you can do all that daily driving. daily driving is, I mean, obviously if you're stuck on an interstate, in wall-to-wall traffic, looking ahead is not going to help you out much other than to know what's slowing you down. But if you can drive back roads, like I said, I won't say I picked my location of the house because of it, but it was a benefit that I was able to drive this, no traffic, all back roads around a lake, curvy road, and it's just a fantastic route to take. And it's, and I can do a lot of looking ahead. Sometimes it's looking through trees, as I said, but a lot of times there's a lot of looking ahead, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
And that looking ahead, I do the same thing. Although most books are for road racing, I even think that's a good place to practice scanning. I can look at the little dashed lines and look up and look at the next one, look up 3 or 4, look back. That's one game I play as well, just to kind of keep the eyes in the idea of that.
And if scanning is your the approach you embrace for autocrossing, then by all means, and that's the place to practice it. And there's so many games you can play. I mean, you're walking through an airport, you're not looking at your feet. You're looking at the people going every which way with their carry bags and stuff. And you're looking at gate numbers and maybe for a bathroom, or all these things. And all those things are practice in looking ahead and scanning and all that. And if you are conscious about it while you're doing it, it makes it a lot less stressful. It's a lot more fun if you walk through an airport or a grocery store as if you're driving. And so, it's just, how committed are you?
So how many of us are committed when we're walking around to, let's say, look for everything orange or something like that? Like what games can you play when you're walking through an airport or something else to pick out the colors and notice things?
Airports, grocery stores, there's so many places, your daily drive to work, there's so many places you can practice stuff. And by all means, if you're looking to get to the pointy end, then that's, you've got to find those opportunities and use them, because it can't always be just Saturday or Sunday for 3 or 4 runs. You've got to work hard at it. And anybody who's a successful racer is working hard at it. Not just the naturals are few and far between.
Yeah, no kidding. We don't know how many of the things somebody brings to the table. They may not be working hard, but what they're doing is paying off for them doing this. Kind of like my thoughts on things, at least for this one to wrap up, is what resources do you have that you would suggest? Are there books and such you'd suggest? Are there any videos? Evo School, obviously. What are some other thoughts?
There used to be I used to have a book that was written by one of the earliest instructions for autocross is a guy named Dick Turner. Had a school. I never went to it. Some of the other old timers, might chime in and say that but he wrote a book, The Secrets to Autocrossing Fast, probably wrote it in the 70s or early 80s. And I remember reading it, and I remember sharing it with others. New autocrossers, they had what it took to get to the top. I remember sharing it, and hence it got lost because somebody took it and never returned it. But that was a pretty good basic book. I didn't agree with everything he said, but nobody ever would. You'd never, if 10 of us autocrossers sat in a room, we probably wouldn't agree on anything, from what we were going to have to drink while we discussed it to when we were going to go to the bathroom. We just wouldn't agree on everything, and so that goes back to that. There's no right way to autocross. There's no correct way. And, learn as much as you can. Mostly you're going to learn it sitting in a car. You might pick up some hints. I mean, the internet has some good videos and some, you can go to YouTube and watch autocross videos till you're sick, and you can take stuff away from that kind of stuff. Data you can take stuff away from. I mean, all that stuff is, this is great technology. And like I said, in the beginning, a regular autocross, there was 5 runs at autocross when I started. You got 3 runs. That was it. That's what they did at Nationals. That's what we do at home. 3 runs is it. When they started getting these clubs to 4 or 5, used the lot all day long and all that stuff, that was pretty much unheard of through the 80s at least, that no local club gave you more than 3 opportunities. so that just isn't enough. That just isn't enough. You've got to practice. So what us crazies did back then was we just travel all as far as we could. I can remember, I ran a restaurant and bar in Augusta, Maine, which is pretty much nowhere near autocrossing. The nearest autocross was 60 miles away. I remember closing the bar 2:00 in the morning, Sunday morning, going back to my apartment, shower, and get in my car, driving 6 hours to be at an 8:00 autocross in Western Massachusetts. So figure I probably drove 250, 300 miles to find an autocross. That year I did 29 days, which was unheard of in New England because you had to travel a lot to get to that stuff. Now, it's, with all the 2-day events and the things that we have, it's not that hard to get a 20-day season in, with the kind of driving local. And you get 4 or 5, 6 events, 6 runs in an event. So it shortens up that learning curve quite a bit.
Yeah, that is so nice. That's where I think about California, Texas. There's some places where every weekend you can race, get that seat
You can
time.
race. And that's and I'm probably, because I'm so busy, I just kind of focus on a couple of clubs that are local to me, that are close by. But I'm sure that if I sat down and my weekends were totally unobstructed, that I could probably run. The season goes late. It goes into November here. Usually starts up in February. I would say that 25 events, 25 weekends would be no problem at all in my area.
Nice.
In New England, first event, those guys are just they've been started for probably the first event was mid-April, and they're usually done by mid-October because I don't know. I know you guys have a winter series in Colorado. I don't know, I keep trying to get people interested in doing something like that, even here where we have the same lot, same course all winter. That the guys that want to can just go out and run. But, there's plenty of opportunities. And like I said, the fact that we get a lot of runs and people are a lot more open. I don't even think it was legal to have a rider when I started. I think I'm accurate. I think I'm accurate in saying that it wasn't legal to have a rider with you. So and they didn't have any video or anything. So you just kind of learned on your own, watching other people and stuff, when you could. And so a lot of that stuff has made it a lot easier to get, to get a head start, to get started. It's the only way we could do it back in the old days was perseverance. You just had to keep working at it. And like I told you, with the amount of time it took me to win a local event, I could have given up at any point. Nobody would have blamed me at all. Could have, picked up a more frustrating sport like golf or something. But this is what, I was sucked in. I just loved sitting in the car with the helmet on and driving. And if it's and riding, that's that kind of thing. Schools, they didn't come into play until way longer. But still, I still learned stuff from Evo schools. When I started instructing, I had to go through the classes and was amazed that, I thought I knew my stuff. I knew how to draw across. I had a couple of national championships by then. I'd won, I finished second. I think I finished second at nationals like 7 or 8 times. So I've got a lot of, I was almost there kind of thing. Divisional championships. I won 20 regional championships in a row. First person ever in New England to do that. But I knew what I was doing. And that was, most of those were before I took an Evo school, before I started instructing. And I learned, so I was like, man, I've been going at this all wrong, and still gather, still see things like, man, never would have thought to do that. And it worked for the guy. It's like, I got to try that. So, it's always, I'm always learning stuff. I'm always gathering stuff. It's not mundane ever. There's always stuff to learn. There's always an approach. There's always something to try. And I don't think it'll ever stop.
Exactly. I love that. I love that attitude and outlook, and just that thought there. So tell us, favorite car or favorite cars that you've driven, owned.
Favorite cars that I've driven. Oh, I'm a big fan of C5 Corvettes. Nobody knows that. But I've been quoted many times saying, if Jeanette would just retire, I'd find me a nice C5 co-drive and be somebody's tire warmer and just, buy a set of tires or two for the year, and just that would be a really cool car to do. Are there cars out there in the world that that are currently campaigned, modified, prepared, street prepared, that kind of stuff that I'd like to drive? Oh, that list is pretty long. But as far as what do I think I could go out and have a lot of fun in? Best bang for the buck, no question, C5 Corvette.
The answer is becoming more and more in this podcast. The answer is C5 Corvette. that is coming up more.
Have you ever driven one?
I have, but only not even a handful of runs. But yeah, they are amazing.
Yeah, and so they come to. I mean, the C6 is nice too. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, a C5 just does everything so well. And you talk to the guys that got one. It's like, what did you do? Bought a set of Conies. I bought this sway bar and I put tires on it. It's like, that's it. Yeah, alignment. It's like, and the car is like. It's the easiest car in the world to drive. It's just so easy. It does everything just, there's no surprises at all. It is just so fun. I mean, I just get excited just seeing one pull in at a school, because I know that, good chance I'm going to drive it, and so, I don't even think I drive them well. They're just a lot of fun to drive. I think the only other thing other than that is a good CSP Miata is awesome. Just there's a few front runners, and there are some that have come and gone through schools. Been in Tim Aro's, Billy Davis's before it was his previous owner of this. Even if it's not built to the limit, CSP Miatas are a hoot. They're another car that just does everything with no surprise at all. They're fast, they're fragile these days, but they're fast and fun to drive. And street prepared always intrigued me anyway. I ran there for a long time, and the CSP Miata is just awesome.
I think I'm glad I haven't driven one of those, because seeing Billy Davis's, I think, was for sale a while back. I'm like, oh my goodness, those things are so fast. Watching Scott Frazier fly around in it, I'm like, it's insane.
Oh yeah,
just insane.
Yeah, they just do everything right. They've got a lot of grip, they've got a lot of power, they've got a lot of brake. They just do everything just awesome. They're just awesome cars. And so, that's the car. I think it's fair to say that's the car for CSP, and to see the different guys, and a lot of guys who have gravitated to it just because of the competition. They're just, and if you drive one, you'll know that they're just so much fun, so much fun. I'm sure there's other cars out there but those are those are the ones that I've been in that I just like. Man, this is going to be a lot of fun today.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
That's cool. That's cool.
I thank you for all the time, insights, and stories, and man, I loved it.
Well, that's cool. You left out a question. I was already.
Which question? No, you can bring your own.
No, the fantasy car.
Oh, yes, sorry.
The other cars were cars that I've driven that I enjoyed, a fantasy car. I'd love to drive an A-Mod car. One of my nearest and dearest friends, Billy Goodale, I beg him. Every time I ask him, just please let me co-drive with you for a year. Let me take it out on the test course. And it's like, those cars are pretty fragile, and you don't make a run that you don't mean. And it's like, God, I would love to drive an A-Mod car to find out now that I understand aerodynamics a little bit better, it's like, know what kind of downforce, what you can get away with in those cars and why they go so fast. And so just to see them, to see them run and to drive, a good A-Mod car would be, would be awesome to me. And I know there's a couple out there, and I'm not trying to parlay this like Junior did. We did the interview, and then all 3 cars he wanted to drive, people ran over him, threw him the keys, and said, "Go out and drive it." And so he got all his fantasies like in one afternoon, a week after he did his. That's not what I'm shooting for. I just think that A-Mod would be just the epitome of my sport. It's just like driving a double A fuel dragster would be to a drag racer. It's like I just would like to feel it just once.
Yeah, we don't want to overdo it for you. We want to spread this out. So as you go around the country, we hope people throw you the keys. There probably aren't any keys, but they throw you, hey, go for it.
Go for it. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Everybody says keyless car, and that would be. I would think that would be a lot of fun too. I've driven a couple of C-Mods. They're fun. I just can't get used to the width. I guess I drive off the nose of my cars, and I figure once the nose has cleared the cone that I'm good. And I kept hitting cones because the back end was wider than the front end, and so I've struggled with those. There's a few cam cars out there that I've encountered, and some of these ultimate cars that I've encountered that I see them, and I was like, man, Dussault's car out of Texas, that Camaro, 2-frame Camaro. I rode in it once, and it is a fantastic car. Does it fit? Does it fit in anybody's rules? I don't know. He races it a lot, but Mike's car is just fantastic. So there are cars. CP. I'd like to try a CP car. A good one would be fun to drive. I've been in a couple, but not. It was like in a school setting, and so. It just was nuisance to get in, change drivers and all that stuff, and so you really didn't focus on going fast. But those would be cars that would be a lot of fun to do. A lot of fun to do.
You're making me want to step up my game. Like I need to drive more cars to have some kind of confidence because those things just seem out of control if I was in them. I think I need a lot more experience in real drive or something.
Oh yeah. Oh, would I go out and spin it? Oh, probably I would. I'd probably spin some of those big horsepower cars. But just to experience, it isn't even like, just experience what it's like to be on the limit, or 90% of the limit of a corner in an A-Mod car, or 90% of a limit, in a D-Mod car or E-Mod car, those kind of cars, to be on the limit of a CP car, just to feel what it's, with all that tire and all that grip and all that power, just to feel what it was like, not with any intention of ever, of owning one or competing in one competitively. Just go out and make a pass and see what it actually feels like.
Maybe I
think all those would be a lot of fun.
I might just be scared that if I do that, I really want to drive one. That might be the real thing sitting behind me. That I want to see how fast it'll go, and I'll probably spin it and want to figure it out.
That's the reason I've never been skydiving. Because I'm afraid that if I did it once, I'd really enjoy it, and then I'd want to do it all the time. And having more than a little daredevil in me through my life, not so much lately, but through my life, I did a lot of things just on a dare, and I'm afraid that the adrenaline rush would be so cool that I'd want to do it again and again and again. So I've avoided some of those things.
Good call. No, I appreciate it again. Lots of great stories and input there.
All right. Well, like I said, we can go back and revisit social stories and other things, but starting and finishing and all that stuff. But I think I ate up a lot of time. Hopefully, you'll pare it down a little bit.
Oh, I won't pare it down much at all. Some people I know don't cut anything out of podcast. I wrote down where, like I said, hey, hold on a second, but otherwise,
it's been a lot of fun. It's been interesting to say stuff that you think, to say it out loud. Hopefully it comes off good, and it's entertaining for others. We'll talk another day.
Well, hopefully I'll meet you soon.
All right. Thanks, Ken. See you. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. For the show notes and contact information, please visit autocrosstalk.com. There you can also subscribe so that we can keep you up to date on new shows as they come out. Also, please leave us a review on iTunes and subscribe on iTunes for the upcoming shows. You can connect to our Facebook page at facebook.com/autocrosstalk. You can share your thoughts, your insights, your questions, your suggestions there. Also share with your friends. Hopefully you found it entertaining and motivating, and hopefully other people will as well. It's been fun, and and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for listening, and check back next week for the next show.